Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. This is the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 240966, 240967, 240968, 240969, 240970, 240971, 240972, and 240973. I want to thank all of you for being here today. Before calling the roll, I would like to announce that we have translation services available for anyone present at today's hearing. If needed, please go to the table to my left. Services are offered in Mandarin and Cantonese. Mr. Christmas, will you please call the roll to take attendance?
Councilman Squilla. Council Lady Gaudier. Councilman Jones. Councilman Jones. Councilman Young. Councilman Driscoll. Present. Council Lady Lozada. Council Lady Bass. Councilman Phillips. Councilman O'Neill. Council Lady Gilmore Richardson. Councilman Thomas. Councilman Harity. Council Lady Ahmad. Council Lady Landau. Council Lady Brooks. Councilman O'Rourke. Council President Johnson.
Present. A quorum of the committee is present, and this hearing is now called to order. Mr. Christmas, will you please read the title of the bills?
Bill 240966 to grant the necessary authorizations for the city to help facilitate development, construction, and operation of a new arena for the Philadelphia 76ers professional basketball. Including authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property and such other city officials as may be appropriate on behalf of the city to enter into the following agreements and take the following actions. Acquire fee simple title to all or portions of 1001 to 1025 Filbert Street, 1001 to 1019 Market Street, and 1025 Market Street, together the Market and Filbert Street properties. Acquire fee simple title to other parcels of land, aerial areas, and subsurface areas in the vicinity of Market and Filbert Street properties, including without limitation those areas reverting to the city or other parties in connection with the striking of certain aerial portions of 10th Street between Market Street and Filbert Street, the additional properties and certain other nearby parcels and areas. Enter into a ground lease agreement with the Philadelphia Authority for Industrial Development, under which the city would lease to pay all or a portion of the Market Street, the Market and Filbert Street properties, and the additional properties, if any, and other parcels and subsurface areas the city now owns in the vicinity of those properties, all of which collectively would constitute the arena site, and join in or consent to a sublease and development agreement, the sublease, between paid and other in either CBL Arena LLC, an entity affiliated with the Philadelphia 76ers LP, or another entity affiliated with the 76ers, under which Arena Co. or other 76ers related entity would sublease the arena site, and cause an arena to be constructed on it, including a multi-purpose sports and entertainment facility, an ancillary, accessory, and related amenities, improvements, and infrastructure, and agree to other related conditions. Upon the expiration or termination of the sublease or other circumstances set forth in the sublease, convey fee simple title to the arena site to pay for disposition to Arena Co., grant, accept, amend, relocate, and extinguish easements, agreements, conditions, covenants, and restrictions encumbering or benefiting the arena site and any city-owned property adjacent to the arena site for the benefit of the arena site to facilitate construction and operation of the arena. Enter into a direct operating covenants agreement among the 76ers paid in the city, under which the Sixers agree to play substantially all of their regular season and playoff home games in the arena, and take all necessary and appropriate, all actions necessary and appropriate to accomplish the intent and purpose of this ordinance. all under certain terms and conditions. And Bill 240967, authorizing and approving the execution and delivery of a service agreement between the City of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Authority for Industrial Development relating to the provision by the Philadelphia Authority for Industrial Development of certain project-related services to promote, among other things, the growth and expansion of business, commerce, and tourism within the City of Philadelphia in connection with the development of a multi-purpose sports and entertainment facility, including an arena to accommodate the National Basketball Association games, and family entertainment, community, retail, and other uses, authorizing and approving the obligation of the City of Philadelphia to pay in full when due the service fee and other amounts payable under the service agreement, and covenanting to make necessary appropriations for such purposes, and authorizing city officials to take necessary and appropriate actions to accomplish the intent and purpose of the ordinance, all under certain terms and conditions. And Bill 240968, authorizing the revision of lines and grades on a portion of City Plan number 307 by striking from the city plan and vacating Filbert Street from 10th Street to 11th Street under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 240969, authorizing the revision of lines and grades on a portion of City Plan number 307 by striking from the city plan and vacating certain aerial portions of 10th Street between Market Street and Filbert Street under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 240970, authorizing CBL Arena LLC and its successors in interest to construct, own, and maintain various right-of-way encroachments in the vicinity of 1001 to 1019 Market Street, 1025 Market Street, and 1001 to 25 Filbert Street, Philadelphia, PA 19107, under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 240971, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by amending certain definitions relating to signs, creating an arena area within the Center City Overlay District overlay, and making related changes, including a master plan requirement and changes to accessory signs controls, all in connection with zoning rules for a proposed arena in Center City, and approving a master plan for the arena area, all under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 240972, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising certain provisions of Section 14906 entitled Market Street East Sign Regulations, all under certain terms and conditions. And finally, Bill number 240973, approving the amendment of a neighborhood improvement district in the area generally bound by and including 11th Street to the west, Filbert Street to the north, 8th Street to the east, and Market Street to the south, with the exception of certain condominium units at 801 Market Street condominium not included in the district, known as the Gallery Neighborhood Improvement District, to remove certain portions of such property generally bounded by Filbert Street on the north, 10th Street on the east, 11th Street on the west, and Market Street on the south from such district in accordance with the provisions of the Community and Economic Improvement Act, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christmas. Before you call the first panel, I just want to do some housekeeping announcements. Just want to make sure that in terms of today's hearing, we welcome all comments during public testimony. We ask for all those who are spectators to be respectful, even if you are for the project or against the project in terms of the proceedings today. Any event that things do get a little out of hand and not based upon respective dialogue. To my left, we are working in partnership with the Office of Civil Affairs, the Sheriff's Office, and the Philadelphia Police Department. We want to make sure this is a very robust and engaging dialogue on a very critically important proposal that's before all of us here today. I want to also acknowledge the presence of the author of the legislation, Councilmember Mark Squilla. I want to also acknowledge the presence of Councilmember Nicholas O'Rourke. With that being said, Mr. John Christmas, will you please call the first panel?
Mr. John Chin of PCDC.
Yeah.
Good morning, John. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, Councilman.
That's good. Good to see you. John, can you just state your name and title for the record, and please begin your testimony and also acknowledge all who are present with you at the table.
Sure, thank you. Name is John Chin, C-H-I-N. My title is Executive Director of the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation. So we have a panel of 4 persons sitting here before the City Council members. They will talk about the impact and concerns we have about the proposed arena. I today will give you a little bit of context so we all can understand where we come from and why we're here today and what our position is. So with that, dear Council President Johnson and members of the City Council, again, my name is John Chin, Director of PCDC, which has shepherded the growth of Chinatown for nearly 6 decades. As Chinatown's RCO, we manage zoning, uses, and the development and the growth of Chinatown and the development that is consistent with our neighborhood vision. As an affordable housing developer and social service provider, we have developed over 400 units of housing and have helped thousands of low-income residents achieve financial stability and remain housed. As a taking care of business organization, we have kept Chinatown clean, and as a commercial quarter manager, we have provided technical assistance to our small mom-and-pop businesses. And as an urban planner, we practice the principle of development for the people, by the people. So, the people of Chinatown trust us to protect Chinatown and guide its preservation as a thriving and authentic hub of Asian American culture. We carry this responsibility with great care. Our Chinatown and our economy have not recovered from the pandemic, and the National Trust for Historic Preservation agreed when they accepted our nomination and listed Chinatown on the 11 most endangered places in 2023. Chinatown's future has never been more vulnerable in my lifetime. This arena will push Chinatown towards the precipice. This is the reason why PCDC opposes the arena proposal. We have seen and heard pointed questions by this body about the community benefits agreement and the project in this chamber. I appreciate this legislative body for its due diligence in searching for the true impact of the community benefits agreement. There are many details which are lacking. These City Council hearings are necessary and must not be rushed to meet a deadline which is not your choosing. This is a 30-year commitment to the City of Philadelphia and has huge impacts for the neighborhoods surrounding it. It is also important for me to say that the CBA and its contents were not our choosing. I learned about the CBA terms on the same day as the public learned about it. PCDC and our committee of residents, business owners, institutions, and property owners had numerous meetings with 76 Development Corp. I and others met with city officials about the arena. I was very clear in our meetings that the arena does not bring any organic benefits to the neighborhood. We talked about problems, challenges, and what mitigation could look like. Our committee told them that traffic and parking are the greatest threat to the Chinatown economy. Gentrification, displacement will erase Chinatown if 6 years of construction does not. This is not an agreement of benefits, the CBA, and it certainly does not respond with equal intensity to the severity of the problems that the arena causes our community. This CBA does little to protect Chinatown from the precipice. And I do not know that it can. For these reasons, we beseech the City Council members here today to vote no on this legislation. Thank you.
State your name for the record, ma'am.
Romana Lee Akiyama. Good morning, members of City Council. My name is Romana Lee Akiyama, and I'm a board member of the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation. I'm a longtime Philadelphia resident, I'm a former city official, I'm a former resident of Chinatown, and I'm an active member of the Asian American community. Today, I'm representing the interests, needs, and concerns of the grandmothers, the grandfathers, the parents, the aunties, the uncles, and the children who call Chinatown home. I was raised coming to Chinatown on the weekends with my father, who taught me that in order to know where you are going in life, you have to know where you come from. Maintaining a sense of identity is not just something nice to do, it's survival for those who have been historically and systemically excluded in this country. Earlier in my career, I worked as a community development professional in both Boston and Philadelphia's Chinatowns. From 2008 to 2011, I was the deputy director of the National Coalition for Asian Pacific American Community Development, a national organization made up of nearly 100 community-based organizations spanning 21 states and the Pacific Islands. We supported local organizations in revitalizing, protecting, and growing neighborhoods that serve as residential communities, centers of commerce, places of new beginnings for recently arrived immigrants, and cultural beacons that provide a sense of belonging and identity. Philadelphia Chinatown was one of the communities that received our technical assistance and support. There are 3 things that I want you to know about my experiences. Number 1, historic Asian American and Pacific Islander neighborhoods across the country, such as the Chinatowns, the Japantowns, have continued to face external threats. All must fight to survive, and some have not made it. In particular, API neighborhoods that sit on valuable downtown, highly coveted lands and property have been most at risk for threat. These historic neighborhoods were created to keep quote-unquote undesirable immigrants isolated in one section of the city. And over time, developers and governments realized the value of this downtown land, took parcel after parcel, and pushed out long-term residents one urban renewal project at a time. I'm gonna be a little bit provocative here and say that we need to name the racism and xenophobia that Asian American and Pacific Islander neighborhoods have faced and continue to face, whether explicitly or implicitly. Number 2, second thing I want you to know, API ethnic neighborhoods must maintain a delicate ecosystem in order to keep their vibrancy. Chinatowns rely on a delicate system of small businesses, residential base, and cultural institutions. When one leg of that stool is destabilized, whether by development or displacement, the entire community is at risk. Boston's Chinatown faced a similar trend of development pressures from local and state highway projects, neighboring universities, and medical center development. Today, it continues to fight and hold on to the vibrancy because it has those 3 pieces in place. As a national organization, we were able to build with them and support this active community because, again, they had that solid internal infrastructure. Washington, D.C.'s Chinatown, in comparison, is an example of a community that I worked with that did not have that internal ecosystem in place. And we were not able to help them stabilize or continue to face disappearance. Which brings me to my 3rd and final point. Once a neighborhood reaches a tipping point in the wrong direction, it's very difficult to come back from the brink of disaster. The rise and fall of DC's Chinatown is well documented. It's one of the worst examples of contemporary Asian American and Pacific Islander neighborhood erasures, but certainly it's not too far from the trends. Just 10 years after the Capital One Arena opened, DC's Chinatown population shrank dramatically to only 300 residents of Chinese descent. Business after business owned by Asian Americans disappeared. In Seattle, leaders of the International District, Chinatown, warned that their community benefits agreement was not enough to protect them. They were right. Today, Philadelphia and Seattle's Chinatowns, 2 of the nation's oldest, are among the most endangered historical sites in the country, according to the National Trust for Historic Preservation. The city-sanctioned community impact study showed that 50% of Chinatown businesses would be negatively impacted by this proposal. We need to consider this assessment, and we need to heed the warning. Lastly, I want to draw your attention to national political trends and emphasize that what happens here locally matters. We face another 4 years of a presidential administration that was responsible for fueling anti-Asian hate and violence, and that promises to dismantle our collective multiracial democracy. Solidarity between and across vulnerable communities will help us weather this upcoming storm. Chinatown's survival is a piece of resisting the dismantling of our democracy. Chinatown is deserving of our protection and care as a city, and I urge you to vote no on any legislation that does not adequately protect Chinatown. Thank you.
Just state your name for the record, sir, and begin.
Okay. Good morning, City Council members. My name is Dan Cao. I am a first-generation immigrant, and I am the owner of Yimei Restaurants at 915 Arch Street in Chinatown, as well as the publisher of 2 Asian weekly newspapers, Metro Chinese Weekly and Metro VI News, for the past 17 years. So I'm here today to strongly oppose the proposed new arena in Chinatown and express my frustrations with the inadequate allocation of CBA funds to our community. I urge the City Council to continue to evaluate other options for the location choice of the arena instead of Chinatown. Over the past 2 decades, Asian American business owners have been instrumental in revitalizing neighborhoods across Philadelphia, including Washington Avenue, Oregon Avenue, and Northeast Philadelphia. Yet, our very own cultural and business hub, the 150-year-old Chinatown, now faces an existential threat due to this arena project. Chinatown is unique for many reasons. From business perspective, it has been an incubator for entrepreneurial growth that has created jobs, tax revenue, tourism attractions for the city. As a publisher, I have witnessed remarkable success stories. A small grocery store on 10th Street that grew into a supermarket chain with nearly 10 locations. And in Chinatown, a small bubble tea shop that evolved into a hospitality group with over 20 locations and multiple concepts. Chinatown also serves as an essential hub for the region's 3,400 Chinese-owned businesses, providing vital supplies and support for restaurants and other enterprises. Chinatown has also been my foundation. It's where I started my newspaper business and grew my restaurant business. Yimei has been fortunate to succeed, growing 300% versus pre-pandemic and expanding from 12 jobs in 2019 to 40 jobs today. On a busy Saturday, we serve as many as 600 dine-in customers and fulfill 200 delivery orders. So what truly sets Chinatown apart is its ability to draw visitors from far beyond the city limits. With over 250,000 Asian Americans living in surrounding counties, many are willing to drive 45 minutes or more to experience authentic Chinese cuisine and culture. This makes Chinatown a unique and powerful economic asset for Philadelphia, attracting suburban dollars into the city, something very few cities in the United States can claim. However, the proposed arena threatens to destroy this dynamic. The years of construction, roadblocks, and traffic congestion on game days will drive away customers and disrupt the delicate ecosystem that keeps Chinatown thriving. Suburban families who once made the trip to Chinatown will turn elsewhere, and delivery customers who account for over 40% of my restaurant's revenue will face longer wait times and forcing them to order from other restaurants outside Chinatown. Of the 120 immigrant-owned restaurants in Chinatown, many lack the resources or support to navigate these challenges. Since the arena's announcement, at least 4 businesses have approached me about closing or selling, fearful of the disruptions the arena will bring. This isn't about individual business, it's about preserving a historic community that has contributed to Philadelphia for generations. Chinatown is a cultural and economic heartbeat for our city, and allowing it to be sacrificed for an arena is short-sighted and harmful. I urge the council to recognize what is truly at stake and to take meaningful action to protect Chinatown. Thank you for your time and considerations.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Harry Leong, and I was born and raised in Chinatown and continue to live, work, and serve there. I am the center director of the Chinese Christian Church and Center and also the president of the Philadelphia Suns. Our church started in 1941, or over 83 years ago. We've served the community providing for the needs and looking after the welfare of our community and city. Each Sunday, over 600 adults, plus another 150 children, come to our church for worship services. In addition, another 600 from 3 other churches attend services in Chinatown. So the community is very active on Sundays. Over 1,200 churchgoers are in the community to worship, to shop, to eat, to play, and to socialize. In addition to that, there are even others who may not be attending churches who come just for those same reasons. To also shop, to eat, to play, and to socialize. The fear that I have is the gentrification of the community, particularly businesses closing and residents moving out as a result of that. The property taxes over the years have steadily risen. Businesses and residents have left the area because of the rent increases. The property owners transferred to the renters. So how can businesses survive, and how can residents stay in this area when they can't afford it, particularly the fixed income members of our community? Last night, Councilman Squilla, thank you, Councilman, for joining us in Chinatown to hear about the legislation. I can say immediate impact of it is it's the same news. We didn't hear anything different from yesterday's meeting that we haven't heard in the past. The questions are still the same. A little bit disappointing. And one of the things, one of the questions that was asked was that the councilman has supporters in his district who are directly affected by the 76ers proposal. The Washington Square West, Chinatown, as well as the neighborhood and the surrounding city. And the question was despite the opposition, why is he choosing to present the legislation and support this project? And he brought up the Sugar House Casino and how at the start of the casino, there were not many supporters for that casino. And after it was built, people started saying, hey, that's a good thing for our community. But honestly, that's different from what we have in Chinatown. Down at Sugar House, and we all know that Sugar House there's warehouses, there's the river, there's vacant buildings at that juncture before when the Sugar House was there. So the area, and it's wide streets, right? Delaware Avenue is right there. But it's different from Chinatown. Chinatown Sorry, I'm trying to find my point. Chinatown is currently, the proposed site is at the fashion district, and the streets surrounding are 2 lanes. Market Street is the biggest street. There's very little open space in the area. Buildings are very close to each other. Buildings are multi-use too. There's commercial, and then at least in Chinatown, there's commercial on the first floor, and then residence on the second floor. The area, even surrounding the area, is limited as far as traffic and space. So that's really different from Sugar House, and so that type of development, it's able to do it there. I don't believe that this 76ers arena, that our community and the area surrounding it can support this arena. The footprint of the arena is also not optimal. The proposed arena has a planned seating capacity of 18,500, which is about 2,500 less than the Wells Fargo Center. Basically a 12% decrease in the number of seats in the area. So financially, how can the owners make that work? Of course, the customers will have to pay for it. Who knows how much the regular ticket will cost? In the past 6 years, the Sixers have been in the top 3 in attendance since 2018, primarily because it's been a competitive team. Unlike the Brooklyn Nets, in 2012, they opened the Barclays Center. And since 2012, they're ranked no higher than 13th. And that was in 2002 in attendance. The argument that the Sixers say that they want a world-class facility in order to have a top team, no, that it's not really the facility that brings the attendance. It's actually the wins, right? It's the wins that count. So the millionaires, the billionaires, are going to be the ones that profit out of this. We know that. The billionaires are going to profit from that. Lastly, much of my work in the community is serving the youth and families through education, athletics, culture, and service. I was a product of the church and Sons outreach programs. So I was a product in the program, and I grew up to lead the programs. The Sons motto is building and supporting a better community. The proposed 76ers place and its highly touted $50 million CBA goes against building and supporting the community. One of the slogans I saw on some of the shirts was "Build It," referring to the arena. But from what I've seen in these 2.5 years of being involved in talks with and hearing the Sixers, the cost to the city in tax revenue, to the mayor-approved CBA, to future costs like traffic, increased public services like police and sanitation, the anticipated effects benefiting more than the city. It's not a project that is good for Chinatown, Center City, the city, nor the state. It seems like this place is sucking up more resources than it's giving. I implore our council to stop this proposal from moving ahead and focus on our communities, the constituents. Fix our schools, build housing for the needy, address homelessness, build up our youth, care for our elderly. I mean, those are the priorities for us, for me too. I mean, we're trying to do that in our community. Let's see that citywide. Major on the majors. Major on the majors. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman Jamie Gaultier.
Good morning, and thank you to all of you for being here. I really respect the work of PCDC. I have a few questions that anyone can jump in and answer. First, have any of you looked at cultural/Chinatown district preservation efforts in other cities? And what are some strategies that we should be implementing here in Philadelphia? And which of these strategies do you see in the city's current plan?
Councilwoman, thank you for that question. What we see in other cities, Seattle, San Francisco, New York's Chinatown, is a multi-pronged approach to community preservation. And we're talking about Asian communities here. Ms. Ramana Liakiyama mentioned the three-legged stool. The programs that we see that are successful are cultural programs within the community that attract people to the community, both as residents and as visitors, but paired with a very strong economic development program. One cannot happen without the other. We cannot have Chinatowns across the country where there's only a focus on cultural programming, because we know that the economic engines of Chinatowns are the opportunity for immigrants who don't speak English as a first language to have economic sustainability. New immigrants who don't speak the language have very difficult times finding jobs in mainstream America. So these centers, these economic centers are really important to entrepreneurs, but they're even more important because folks like Dan Chow, they have 40 employees. So it's a path forward for immigrants behind them to earn sustainability for them and their families. So a program that we have seen matches cultural programming with economic development programs. One has to exist with the other, otherwise Chinatowns fail.
And as a follow-up, do you see any of what you have described in the current quote-unquote deal?
I see none of that. The deal that's been presented to the public and to City Council is barely a mitigation plan. The details are so lacking. They talk about an arena that comes to Market Street to revive Market Street East. Well, we know that there's been complaints from the neighbors, institutions, hotels, and conventions that come to Market Street East that it's blighted, it's a nuisance, and there's a huge problem where there's homeless people aren't getting assistance to get housed. There's a huge problem of panhandling, and visitors, we've seen from surveys, are sometimes afraid of the conditions on Market Street East. Well, if we bring an arena to this location, I have not seen any plan that addresses how you're going to address the people who need help, how to eliminate the blight, how to improve the conditions on Market Street. All I've seen and heard is, we'll bring the arena here and it's going to turn Market Street around. That's not good enough.
Can I get one last question on record? Okay. The $50 million CBA amount is 3.2% of the $1.55 billion spread out over 30 years. What, in your opinion, might be a more adequate amount of investment needed to offset the arena's displacement pressures on Chinatown, and how should that money be spent?
You know, we're not here to talk about what's going to work, okay? But we understand the reality of this. This proposal is before City Council, and we understand the reality is that this can go forward with a vote from City Council, and it may not go forward with a vote from City Council. To answer your question, 50 million is not enough, quite frankly. The 50 million CBA that we've seen, very little of that money is here to protect the community. Very, very little. I think less than $10 million. So we're talking about anti-displacement, we're talking about preservation of this community, and if it works here, it can work for other neighborhoods across the city of Philadelphia. It must begin with establishing a community land trust that preserves housing, so people, residents aren't displaced. It must preserve small businesses so the rents and real estate taxes do not displace our mom and pop businesses, all right? To a starting fund at minimum, it has to be $100 million to preserve our legacy businesses, okay? Without any kind of financial support for Chinatown, and there's none in the CBA that I can see for preservation, our Chinatown would disappear.
If it were $100 million, what percentage should go to Chinatown?
All the money should go to Chinatown, but again, if it's successful, Councilwoman, if it's successful, right? This is a model. Commercial community land trust is a model and can be a model for other neighborhoods. And if it's working for Chinatown, this money should be piloted in other neighborhoods as well.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Just real quick, John, in terms of rules of engagement with the administration, how many times have you and your team met with the administration? How many times have you and your team met with the Sixers? And then also your rules of engagement and working with the proposal with the district council person, Mark Squilla. Just want to get an idea of how things unfolded to get us where we're at today.
We have had dozens of meetings with all three parties that you identified. The councilman, who's our councilman, district councilman, the 76ers, Dev Corp., and the city of Philadelphia. I would guess that we've had a little less than a dozen meetings with the city officials, okay? We've had more than a dozen meetings with the 76ers up until maybe 8 months ago when we realized that—
8 months ago? 8 months ago?
Yeah, that was the last time. When we realized that when we brought to them the major concern that we have is traffic and parking, they said to us, we will revise that traffic plan, bring it back to you to show that it will improve and can work with Chinatown. We have yet to see a traffic plan that's going to work for our community. I remind this body here that the Civic Design Review Committee met with the 76ers twice. At the end of the second meeting, they concluded that the traffic plan was improved, but nearly not enough for their satisfaction, okay? We've also met with Councilman Squilla a couple dozen times. I call him, I text him, I email him, I meet with him face to face. What is very disappointing to me is that all those discussions about the problems and challenges that the arena brings to us, we look at the CBA, and it doesn't resemble any of the conversations we have had about Chinatown's need for protection. $1.6 million for construction mitigation over 6 years. Okay, we heard that the SEPTA project in West Philadelphia on the L project, annually there is more funding for construction mitigation. $1.25 million for a cleaning program, which we're already funded for, and we do an excellent job with the Taking Care of Business program that we get city funding from. And $3 million business loan fund. Why would we want to propose to lend people, businesses who are suffering and facing elimination, money that they may not be able to pay back, especially with interest?
Thank you, John. The chair recognizes the Councilmember Jim Harity.
Thank you, Council President, colleagues. John, always good to see you. How many businesses in Chinatown do you estimate that will be directly affected by the construction?
So PCDC has counted a little under 300 businesses in Chinatown. Your city impact study for the community estimates 50% of those will be negatively impacted, so 150 businesses.
That's close to the numbers I was figuring the other day when I was talking about it. So you definitely don't think that the 40 businesses that are in the CBA, you definitely think that that needs to be adjusted? Would that be your observation?
Yeah, absolutely. My official testimony is that CBA does nothing, very little, to protect our community, and money for 40 businesses. Let's just acknowledge that the construction is so massive and it's so long. We're talking about 6 years of construction of an entire city block. Even this body here has concerns about how it's going to impact 2026, right? Imagine our community. It's not going to just impact half a block from the arena construction, 1 block. With the vehicular traffic, the added pollution, the dust, is going to have a huge impact both on the north side of the arena, which is Chinatown, on the south side, which is the neighborhood in Washington West.
Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Sure.
I want to add something about the potential traffic congestions it might create. So my business, my restaurant is on 915 Arch Street. And you know that there's a 7-Eleven on the corner of Fieldwood and 10th Street, right? So for me to get off from 676 and also get to my restaurant, I need to take 10th Street, toward the south, and then turn left on Theobald Street, then turn back onto 9th Street, and then turn left onto Arch Street to get to my restaurant. So a few months ago, there was a delivery truck of 7-Eleven got some issues, and so it stopped probably for some technical reason, stopped in the middle of the block of Theobald Street. And for the truck broke down maybe for 15 minutes, but it created traffic congestions that pushed all the way to 10th, somewhere between Arch and Race. So it took me, I got stuck in the middle of 10th Street between Race and Arch. So I basically got stuck for about 25 minutes longer to get to my restaurant because a delivery truck of 7-Eleven broke down on Theobald Street.
Member Harity, you finish your line of questioning?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilmember Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you to the panel for your detailed testimony. I've met with many of you in this process. One of the things that came up in the meetings that I've been having is that the issue of not just preserving Chinatown, but the growth in Chinatown. What, with or without the arena, what do you see as the path to growth? What does growth look like in Chinatown? Any one of you can answer that question, and I have a couple more after this.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Ahmed, for your question. I referenced the three-legged stool, right? That magic formula for keeping a community safe and whole and with the opportunity for growth. It really comes down to strong small business sector, a growing residential base, and cultural institutions. For those of you who are not as familiar with Chinatown, we have many nonprofits that exist that serve the cultural, artistic, community building needs. Those organizations have kept us together. They've kept us growing. Harry's here from the Chinese Christian Church and Center. And we remain this network and fiber of the community. The residential base, affordable housing is a crisis across the country. But of course, in Chinatown, this has always been a need. And PCDC has held that as our mission and delivered on that for all these decades. And PCDC continues to put affordable housing into the community. So that is critical, right? That low income, the grandmothers, grandfathers that I talked about earlier on, that they have a place to continue to have their services and their needs met. We talked a lot about small businesses today already. We talked about the negative impact. Over 50% of the businesses that exist will suffer, right? So thank you, Councilmember Harity. Now we know 150 businesses will be impacted. So the growth plan really is coming back to these 3 points. How can Chinatown, regardless if the arena happens or not, how can we harness these three-legged stools? How can we continue to attract visitors, right? Continue to bring in people from the community so that we can share our culture and that other people can learn about the community, and Chinatown can continue to be a place that many people find home, right? I want to make this one point clear, is that Chinatown is just not about the people who live there. It is a home for the diaspora of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders that are in our region, and others who are allies and have extended family and that belong to the community. So, I've heard a lot of comments of, we only want to hear from the people who live in Chinatown. So what you need to know is that Chinatown is much more of a hub, and we are dependent on folks who really love the community and want to continue being part of it.
Thank you. My follow-up question is about what is the economic impact currently of Chinatown in the entire city's economic footprint?
So I want to address this question because the economic study that, and I think you're going to hear from other panelists later today who are going to be able to answer that question as well. But the study that was supported by the city on the economic impact did not consider Chinatown. It was solely focused on the arena and what the arena was going to bring to this city. The community impact study did not give enough attention to the economic driver that is Chinatown. The dollars that are spent in the community and the tax dollars that are earned to the city from the businesses. This is a gap, okay? We cannot divorce these two things. So I wanna make that point, and I think I urge City Council to look more closely at that to understand that the economic devastation, we know 50% of the businesses, but what does that actually, do we care enough to know and to recognize that there is economic value in what Chinatown brings to this city? And how do we quantify that? I asked the city to take that on.
Yes. So to that point, this data should be available from the Department of Commerce right now, right today. So why don't we have, I would go on the record to say, I would like to see from the Commerce Department the economic impact by the different census tracts that are within, and they can do it by zip codes, they can do it, they have that information already. So for us to have this conversation, we need that data. We need that data to say, what are you contributing now? When there's the disruption, what will happen to that? Because it comes to all of the city. It's being generated in Chinatown, but it's affecting our entire economic profile. So I want to know what will happen, what is happening now, what will happen the 6 years, and what will happen post the 6 years, and how are we buttressing all of that in order to either maintain or grow? So that was the question. So I just want to go on the record for that. Thank you, Council President. And thank you all of you for your very important testimony.
Thank you very much, Nina Ma. Just a quick question regarding the community impact study that was presented by the administration. Part of the information that was provided to us talks about how, without the arena moving forward, if there was no arena proposal, gentrification is significantly still moving forward rapidly in Chinatown, which means if there was no proposal here today, gentrification would still have a significant negative impact in Chinatown with no proposal. So I would ask the question, the three-legged stool question, what is the Chinatown CDC doing for the longevity of small businesses, affordable and workforce housing, and the cultural preservation of Chinatown? John, could you give us an idea of what you and your team has been doing around that particular strategy? Eric, let's say if there was no proposal of the Sixers Arena, just your plans on how you would move forward to address that three-legged stool issue.
City Council President, thank you for that question. We are facing gentrification, and we are very active to trying to figure out how we ensure Chinatown's here for the next 50 years. We're doing several things here. One thing we have not talked about, and we acknowledge, is the Chinatown Stitch project, which is going to cover the Vine Expressway and reconnect Chinatown North and Chinatown Core. Investments in green public spaces in themselves cause gentrification. So our very own project to improve the conditions of Chinatown will cause gentrification. Out of this project, we have set aside a foundation funding to help us figure out how to achieve equity with this project, how to not displace people, and ensure that people can remain in Chinatown. William Penn Foundation, Knight Foundation funded us to invest in a study. We're hiring consultants to determine some recommendations that we can implement to preserve Chinatown. They're looking at community land trusts, commercial land trusts, which is critical to our economy because it allows second, third generation families who don't want to be in the business that their parents or grandparents were in to be able to sell a property. The land trust can acquire it, and that land trust can implement rules and regulations to preserve affordability, the type of use, and the type of alignment with what we see in Chinatown. So land trust is one. Secondly, the other tools that are in a previous report's recommendation called the Chinatown Future Histories Project looks at value capture. Value capture can look like a TIF, tax increment finance fund, where any appreciation in real estate taxes or values are preserved and kept for the community. It can be used to create more affordable housing. It can be used to offset rent increases for both small businesses and residents. These are the two major tools. The third thing we're doing is we've been a part of a national organization that comes out of the University of Maryland called SBAN, Small Business Anti-Network. Number 4, we're working with the Asian Pacific American Historic Preservation Organization, looking to use best practices that they have seen across the country in Asian communities that worked. In answering Councilwoman Gautier's question, it has to be a parallel line with investment in sustainability of our economy and cultural preservation. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, absolutely. And just the last part, so there's a bridge, the project that you referred to that's going to connect North and South Chinatown. Can you say it again, just for the record?
Yeah, the Chinatown Stitch Project will cover...
Stitch Project.
Yes,
okay.
will cover Vine Expressway and allow us to reconnect these two neighborhoods for
And
Chinatown.
so something that's being built to connect the neighborhood, which should be for good, but is also going to exacerbate gentrification, and some of the things that you talked about that can mitigate gentrification are what you put forward. And can you give me your perspective on Councilman Squilla's Arena District proposal, his cultural preservation of Chinatown proposal, and he also put forth a TIF proposal to address the issue of rising real estate costs in that particular area of Chinatown. Just your perspective of what he has put forward that the wider public may not know about. Sure. Councilman Squilla's proposal of a TIF aligns with our vision of the tools that we need to preserve Chinatown. The Arena District, I need to look further into that, but my understanding the Arena District is really there to mitigate any arena that comes in, because that has to be funded from somewhere, right? And the funding should come from the arena. And whether it's mitigation of cleaning or making sure that there's a marketing promotion program for Chinatown, because it's very difficult. I do want to underscore that Chinatown businesses, you know, you heard a success story of Dan Chow next to me, but most of the Chinatown businesses have not recovered from the pre-pandemic levels of revenue and business. And that is a problem. I know it's a problem for the city of Philadelphia. It's been a problem for the business in the center city downtown area that really rely on the return of office workers, and we're not there yet. Thank you very much, John. The chair recognizes Councilman Rue Landau.
Thank you, Council President. Thanks, everyone, for being here. The economic impact analysis, usually the way CBAs are created is that you do an economic impact analysis, you put a dollar amount on the impact, and you create the CBA to offset any of the negative effects that would happen from the development. So my question is, did you have any input into the dollar amounts determined for each of the programs in the CBA? And were those the result of analysis from the impact studies, from community or business engagement discussions, or discussions with your colleagues?
Thank you for that question, Councilman Landau. We don't know, I don't know what formula was used to come up with the CBA or the dollar amounts in that CBA. I have no idea. But you point out you make a very good point. In order to do an analysis, you have to have a foundation of data. I don't know that we have that data to determine what the baseline is for Chinatown's revenue, businesses, the number of employees we have in Chinatown. None of that. So without a baseline, how do we arrive at a CBA agreement?
I appreciate that, and I appreciate, Romana, your response to Councilmember Nina Ahmed's question about that if the analysis was not fully inclusive, then the resulting report that talks about how to mitigate that impact cannot possibly be thorough and inclusive as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to ask just a follow-up question, because I represent Philadelphia Navy Yard, the PIDC board. What role did John, the PCDC, play in providing a level of input before the impact study RFP went out? Did any advocates from Chinatown have an opportunity to sit down with PIDC before the RFP went out to actually do the impact study?
Yes, PCDC was part of a group of folks from Chinatown meeting with PIDC on a regular basis to discuss the RFP. I think we come from a standpoint of there's problems when the 76ers are paying for the RFP that was issued and performed. But we were part of a series of meetings talking about the RFP, the scope of the RFP, and in addition to how some of the data should be analyzed, what should be analyzed, how much should be analyzed. And, you know, I think I can say that the RFP scope of work fell short because to the questions we just heard from the council members to my left, right, we don't have a baseline of economic understanding of Chinatown and the neighborhoods south of the Market Street East District.
Thank you. So it would be helpful to have the economic impact that Chinatown in itself provides to the city of Philadelphia should have been taken in consideration with the outcome of the actual impact study, correct?
Absolutely. We asked for that. We asked that the economic impact study connect to the community impact study because they are tied together, and that never happened.
I definitely agree with that. That's very informative and good information. Thank you very much.
Can I follow up with some points?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so in Chinatown, there's about close to 300 business. And out of the 300 business, there's about 125 restaurants and retail business. So 125 restaurant business, including like restaurants, bakery shop, bubble tea shop, cafes. So due to my profession as a publisher of Chinese newspaper for the past 17 years, I got to know, I have the fortune to work with 80% of the retail business in Chinatown. So 80% of the business owner, we know each other. And from my understanding, a typical restaurant business in Chinatown, their monthly revenue range from $50K to $500,000 to $500K a month. Okay, so during the last 4 years of pandemic, delivery volume became an essential portion of revenue for any restaurants. That can be anywhere from 40% to 50% delivery volume. So let's use a busy restaurant that can produce $500K a month as an example. For a busy restaurant with this so much revenue, about 45% likely will be delivery volumes. But I think that during the congestion and also during the game days of the arena, most of the delivery volume gonna diminish, gonna disappear. So why? Because a customer in Rittenhouse Square, like for my restaurants, we have about 30% of our customers from Rittenhouse Square from university cities. So these customers are going to experience much longer delivery time. Previously, they can get our order 35 minutes. But during the congestion and game day, they can take as much, could be 1 hour, 15 minutes. After 2 or 3 times, they will turn away from any restaurant in Chinatown. they will be ordering from restaurants elsewhere. So that will have a deep, negative effects on the restaurant in Chinatown. Can potentially bring down our overall revenue down 30–40%.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you for taking time to meet with me yesterday. It was insightful. But I want to put on the record, Mr. President, because if you were sitting here, you wouldn't have to be as dignified as you are up there. You would keep it 100. And the concept of gentrification is not new to anybody in this room. Every part of the city has a neighborhood that is facing what you are facing. Economics drives it, and property values drive it, and we have to face it. We have to face it, however, without a community benefits agreement. Nobody came in, except for one person I will acknowledge, Member Jamie Gourdier pulled out her Pusheisty and actually got one. But very few of us ever get the opportunity to do that. You got a couple? All right, okay. South Philly. All right. My point being is that as we approach this, keep that in mind, that you are facing what we face all the time. So having said that, community benefits agreements, I need a clarification on a number. I was given a number of 1.2 million over 10 years to go to PCDC. Is that a correct number?
That is correct. $1.25 million over 10 years to provide cleaning services.
All right. And I was then told that there was a $14 million agreement.
Just a point of information. Yeah. Councilman Squilla, can you clarify your current negotiation with the administration for your special arenas district and what's going into the arena district and what it covers? Just for the record, because there is two pieces of information that are out there, and I don't think everyone knows in terms of what you have been working on regarding Chinatown and the benefits of the special arena district and what you're working on.
Yes, thank you, Council President, and thank you for testifying, and thank you for having me last night at the meeting in Chinatown. The original proposal did not include the arena district. After the mayor had introduced the CBA and the legislation, we had promised 30 days of review so that we could get a chance to see it and see if some of those mitigations that we thought should be put in place before introduction. After those 30 days negotiating with the Council President's office and the administration, we created an authority and the arena district where the development 76ers would be able to fund that $14 million into that arena district to have the people within the community. Now, the arena district is just not Chinatown. It actually goes from Spring Garden down to Pine Street. So it's Wash West and Chinatown areas. And that money is to be used by a board set up that would be able to dictate what they believe would be the impacts on our community and how best to use that money, not decided by the city of Philadelphia. And that was sort of modeled after the stadium district in South Philly, the casino districts that were built, that were created after the casinos were set up. And so this was just because we did believe, and we heard a lot of the concerns, and we didn't believe that the original CBA met the goals of what the community would need to offset some of those negative impacts. So we did add that additional dollars in there, and that is now part of the CBA. As we're negotiating even additional stuff now, working with the administration, and hopefully we could even add additional dollars into what we hear, business interruption plan and some other means to get additional dollars into that CBA. So that was added as we introduced it. That was not something that was in there originally, but we thought that it was important to have that before introduction, and still I have to say, from our colleagues here and the questions that are asked, we believe that there needs to be more in order to move forward.
For the record, that don't come off my time, right? Because that was a long answer.
Go ahead, Member Jones.
Yeah. My point to you is you should be, I don't think it's clear to everyone that you are negotiating on behalf of your constituents to the tune of not 1 million or 1.2, but as my math, that's 15 million. Is that a simple yes or no? Is that right? Yes or no?
There you go. Yes, I would say we are doing that, and that was something that negotiating, and as you heard today, it's still believed that it's not enough to offset those impacts. So, but yes, we are still negotiating. We've done it before we introduced the bill and are continue to do that. And that's what this legislative process is for, to have those questions being asked by us and also to continue the negotiations through this process before there would be an ability to take a vote.
So, Mark, that's why I asked that question, because I know how hard you fight. And when I heard it was only 1.2, I had to do my due diligence, and I know better now. So I want to give you a attaboy for stepping up for your constituents. My second point in this is all of us care a great deal about what you're going through. I talked to them in the hallway. Everybody is concerned about the intended and unintended consequences. Intended and unintended. But if we vote this down, tell me what you would propose for that parcel.
If you give me $1.5 billion, I propose mixed income housing that addresses poverty, a social service center to address poverty, and to create a small business incubator to lift our citizens out of poverty. So I don't have that money. I don't have the wherewithal. I don't have the resources or the connections to influence what goes there. But the reality is $1.5 billion can be better spent. The construction jobs will still be there, but the outcome and the equity that will be produced will be much wider and greater for the entire city of Philadelphia.
So, all I'm going to say, Mr. President, is as we plan soberly about the future of this city, we have to be responsible stewards both to them, but to the vitality of our city, sir. And we have to protect them. I want to know about a SEPTA plan. I want to know about a security plan, and I want to know about an economic development plan for Market Street. But when people visit our city, I don't want them to come down there to that facility, whatever the vote is, and we have, a wonderful super 5 and below for you to visit. That's not going to happen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I give my kids book bags from 5 and below, so. It's a very serious matter, but it always helps to smile. John and your panel, first and foremost, any other questions and comments from member? The chair recognizes Majority Leader Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Council President, and thank you all so much for coming in. I've enjoyed the opportunity to hear directly from PCDC, from you, John, and from the team.
Excuse me, Madam Leader, can you speak into the microphone?
I
for
apologize.
Documentation, please.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed immensely the opportunity to be able to hear directly from each of you regarding your feedback around this proposal. I wanted to just get clarity on a couple things I heard just a few moments ago relative to the community benefits agreement. And so you stated that you all were in negotiations with the Sixers up until March, I believe my notes state. And you all have not had a meeting with the 76ers since March?
We have not spoken to the
That's crazy.
76ers since March, and that's correct.
I just want to delve into that for a moment. Is that because you all have not asked for a meeting, or they have not asked for a meeting, or whose ball was the court left in?
The ball is for either one of us to pick up and run and ask for a meeting. You know,
The point of information, though,
yeah.
I just beg to differ. I don't think the ball should be in your court, because as your community being impacted, those who want to move the development project forward should be working in partnership with you and your team, just for the record.
Agreed, Council
Should
President.
recognize the
And I agree. That's why I wanted to ask, just so that I have clarity on exactly like where this process left off. In addition to that, you talked about there being a total of 300 businesses in Chinatown. I believe you stated at least 150 businesses would be impacted. And based on the CBA that we have now, for the Business Disruption Fund, it's at $1.6 million, 400,000 over 4 years. With 150 businesses, that would be around $10,666 per business over 4 years. So give or take $2,600 per year per business. Have you all been involved directly in what we see listed here in Exhibit 1 around the CBA? Are you all involved in the ongoing negotiations that have been referenced over the last several moments of your testimony?
We have not been involved in what is produced on that page in the CBA. We never were involved. We currently are not involved in any conversations with regards to amending that number. We know that number is ridiculously low. And just for clarification purposes, our discussions with the city and especially the 76ers were not negotiations. We've consistently came to them and pointed out the harm and the deficits that would be experienced by Chinatown. That was our purpose of meeting with them, so they could understand, and the CBA doesn't reflect that understanding.
Okay, and my last question is regarding housing. I know we talked a lot about housing affordability and the impacts of gentrification on your community specifically. I know in the original proposal there was a housing, I think we saw some type of rendering for a housing tower. If you could just speak to your concerns with that.
Yeah, so we want affordable housing. We need affordable housing. I think that tower proposal with 400 units of housing, of which not quite 20% would go towards affordable housing, that would have been great for Chinatown, okay? What it lacked is the details of affordability. We all know in our own neighborhoods that affordability, according to HUD standards, is not affordability according to Philadelphia standards, all right? So that was a major problem with that. We do want the affordable housing, but the details lacked in that proposal.
Okay, thank you, Council President. I heard the bell.
Thank you. I just want to go for a point of information and clarity to the author of the bill. I just want to go to a point of information to the author of the bill, Councilmember Squilla. Can you elaborate on your proposal regarding affordable housing for the Chinatown district? Also, you introduced a bill regarding cultural preservation of Chinatown, just to get feedback from Mr. John Chen and his team as well. These are things I think need to be on the record so folks can know, because there were two negotiations going on. There's the administration and then there's council. And so he's been working on.
They were not
some aspects.
negotiating with the 76ers. They were telling me what their concerns were, and I was working with them to come up with things to try to lessen the impacts. And I do believe, though, the arena project pushed these things to the forefront, but I think that these are also things that we should be doing anyway to help protect Chinatown. And the cultural overlay was an overlay that would have inclusionary zoning at this point as introduced with any project over 10 units.
What's inclusionary zoning for those who are in the public that may not know what inclusionary zoning is?
Any project over 10 units would have 10% affordable housing at 60% AMI. 60% AMI means that 60% average median income is around $47,000. And the point of that was to hopefully grow the number of affordable units if people decide to build residential units there. We also did a bulk and massing where we chose a number at 3,000 square feet, where in any commercial use, if a project is bigger than 3,000 square feet, it would trigger an automatic variance. Therefore, it would have the proposal would have to meet with Chinatown in order to get a variance to go to the ZBA. You couldn't do it by right. We were worried about that goal was, as we heard from the concerns of keeping the small business feel in Chinatown. You wouldn't be able to combine several buildings to have a large footprint and just by right be able to open up a chain store or a large nightclub type place in Chinatown. And the third thing, well, there's really four things. One, we didn't put into the legislation yet, but are looking to amend that working with law. The third thing was the ability to have limited uses. One was adult uses. The other ones was nightclub uses that they couldn't be by right. You would need a variance for them automatically. And the last thing we wanted to add was franchises. Looking at when people see opportunities in certain neighborhoods, franchises go in and try to purchase properties. They have more resources, and that would eliminate the ability to have small businesses. So we're looking at now working with law that maybe we could say if you have 5 or more businesses in a franchise, that would automatically also trigger a variance that would send that to the community and to the ZBA. That's how the overlay would work, and that overlay is basically in the area of the immediate Chinatown from 13th Street to 8th Street, from Cuthbert or Filbert to Vine. And that was something that we believe, and that is not in this committee of the whole. It's actually going to go to rules because we believe even if the arena doesn't move forward, that should move out as a protection in Chinatown also. Now, that's not their negotiation with the 76ers. That was their conversation. We've been meeting for over 2 years on these things.
So let's just be clear. That's not PC, DC negotiation with the Sixers. They haven't talked to the Sixers over the past 8 months regarding their issues and concerns, but they brought their issues and concerns to you, which are reflected in the pieces of legislation that you have put forward. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so also, and thank you for the three-legged stool, because I'm really utilizing that to formulate my argument how we just objectively look at this proposal. And the cultural preservation. Now, we're working on Africatown in Southwest Philadelphia, myself and Councilwoman Jamie Gauthier, to preserve the African and Caribbean community in Southwest Philadelphia. And we may be partnering on such legislation now, and I think about it. your legislation regarding the preservation of Chinatown, what is it? And give us the reasoning and purpose behind why you put forth that legislation.
Well, I think the goal is, as we heard of pressures that we're seeing within the community, and even projects that are supported within the community, there's still additional pressures to get added when we're talking about the Stitch, and there's even another proposal for the Reading Rail Park. We know that when you do projects like that, that sometimes that's a stress on that community to not encourage gentrification, but more people want to live in a community that has a lot of amenities. So the goal behind that is to preserve the cultural aspect of that neighborhood in a way through zoning. It's not through the law. What we did with affordable housing was that we picked a site that was owned by the city of Philadelphia, which is 11th and Winter, which was the police district there, and agreement with the mayor and with the administration to transfer that property to partner with PCDC and a developer to build a truly affordable property there that would have 30, 50, 60% AMI, that would be 100% affordable. And you know, that's a process to build these affordable projects, if anybody's been through them in their districts, whether it's LIHTC, tax credits, and other resources, but using resources to fill any financial gap by the CBA or the administration who has supported that project also. So this is an ongoing project. This is going to happen anyway also. And so, you know, we know that the challenges that this has brought, we've been meeting and listening, John said dozens of meetings. It's been a lot, and not just with PCDC, there's other organizations throughout the community, the Save Our Chinatown Coalition and others, that we heard repeatedly what their challenges were and concerns are. And so part of the CBA also was creating an oversight committee for traffic, congestion, parking, and street access, and having all the players in there who would determine how this plan is set forth. And it was, you know, included people like SEPTA, PATCO, the community representatives, the RCOs, the small businesses, the police, fire department, parking authority, the parking regulators, small businesses, and so that we could keep the people actually informed, but the people who are actually being impacted are also part of that transit plan. So that's also part of the municipality that we had set forth in our, not the municipality, the Arena District, Special Service District would have that organization as part of that to then relay to the city and to the organizations that are going to be impacted the most on what needs to be done. Jefferson was also part of that because of access 24/7 that's needed for the hospital. So all these things are in place, but what the concern is saying, all right, they're all in place, but the plan's not in place right now, so that, you know, how do you know what's going to happen in the future? And really, even putting the plan in place, and when we see these there you go. Temporary plans in place, until we actually see it in action, we're not going to really know what those impacts are. And we see from the studies that 40% of the people need to take public transit in order for it to work. We talk to other places throughout the country who have built downtown arenas now compared to having arenas in rural, which is mainly auto-centric places. The goal is now to get people into using public transit to try to reduce our carbon footprint, to get people to use that. And what changed that behavior? What was the big things that changed the behavior for people to be able to drive to an event to now would take public transit? Whether you live in Montgomery County and the counties, or you live in Jersey, and you're saying, I'll always drive, I'll never take public transit. Well, if you come to Arena now, then people tell you, well, there's no parking there, so you can't drive, you have to take public transit, right? And you incentivize the use of public transit like you have in other municipalities where they made the arena facilities have transit passes with their tickets. Then you started to see that change in where people now, when they drove 80 to 90% of the time, or now 50% of the time, are taking public transit. These are all the goals that we've been working on and setting up in in what we have added to the legislation and added to the CBA. But, you know, as you hear, it was not negotiated with the team, but negotiated through me from what I heard the concerns were.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Ketchy-Lozada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question. Has any of the...
Excuse me, Ketchy, you speaking to the microphone,
Has any
please?
of the impact studies been able to show the number of jobs that would be impacted in the Chinatown Cultural District? And can you share with us, of those jobs, what is the breakdown? Are there just members of the Asian community that are employed in Chinatown? Are there Latinos employed in Chinatown? Are there African Americans employed in Chinatown? What is the makeup of the businesses and their employees?
So, yeah, I can give you an example of my business, like a typical restaurant in Chinatown. So currently, we have 40 employees, and I think that we have a very diverse team of staff members. So we have Chinese, we have Hispanic, we have about maybe 8 or 9 Hispanic staff members, and we have 2 or 3 African American employees, and we have I don't know 3 or 4 white Americans employees. So that represents a demographic of my business. And I mean, also before this panel finish, I want to present all the city council members a scenario. Okay, so I know that this has been a very long and stressful year due to these projects. So let's imagine that all of us will be traveling to Japan, Tokyo. We're moving over there. And let's say we might be, settling over there for a few years, or maybe even a couple of decades. And then we realize that, wait a minute, there's lots of language barriers, there's cultural barriers, right? Also possibly discriminations, in Tokyo. Living in a foreign country is very challenging for anybody. So let's move it. Suddenly, we realize, why? On the corner of Tokyo, there's a small district for African Americans. And then where you can get all the comfort food from Philadelphia. You can get a cheesesteak, you can get a hoagies, that make you feel you're at home.
I eat tofu, just for the record.
Okay.
I'm vegetarian.
We have very good tofu at my restaurant also. So moving forward, many of us might end up settling down in Tokyo, having kids, having a business in Tokyo. 20 years later, suddenly the baseball team of Tokyo said, you know what, let's put up a stadium on this African American district. I want to ask every one of you, how would you react and how would you protest? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Bass.
Actually, I wanted to also respond.
Go ahead, sir.
Dan's business is pretty much reflective of our community. We actually have a mixed group of our workforce is actually fairly mixed. It's not only Chinese. People view that. It's other Asians as well as Hispanics. I mean, that the Hispanic community, the Mexican community, has actually served in the food industry around the city. So it's pretty much around the city too as well. So it's a mixed.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hi, good morning. Just a couple of questions for you. What would you say, I don't know if you have this data with you, the total number of households that comprises Chinatown? What would that number be roughly?
I can get that number for you, but population-wise, we have about 5,000 people living in Chinatown. If we expand to Chinatown North, it's 8,000 people.
So somewhere between 5 and 8, depending on where you draw the boundary at. What
Right.
you're saying. What's the total number of low and affordable housing units in Chinatown right now, would you say? So for whatever the number of total units are, what would you say the number of low income or affordable housing units are there right now?
We have about 280 units that has used government financing. There are other households and apartments in Chinatown that I would say meets the low-income guidelines for rent, but we're talking about very substandard housing. So 280 that has been financed by government funding.
So 280, you would say like quality housing units for low to moderate or affordable housing?
Yes.
And what, of those, say 280 units, can you give us some information on the demographics of the households?
Yes. We have multifamily, but I would say that of the 280, more than 50% of the residents are seniors.
And other demographic data, do you have the racial breakdown of what those 280 units look like?
Yeah, I do not, but I would guess it's majority Asian American of those 280 units.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for your very, very informative testimony. And obviously, members, through their questions, will continue to stay on top of these issues and addressing your issues and concerns. Will Mr. Christmas please call the next panel?
Ms. Tammy Sortman, Washington Square West Civic Association Board Member.
Hello, how you doing today?
Good morning, how are you?
Good morning. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule. Just please state your name and begin your testimony.
Absolutely. Good morning, my name is Tammy Sortman. I am the president of the Washington Square West Civic Association, and I want to point out that I am privileged to have been living in the neighborhood for over 25 years. I have two of my board members with me today, and they'll introduce themselves once they start speaking. Is that okay? Thank you. So I'm going to start off with a statement, and then we'll go right into 4 sections that we wanted to discuss today. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the Washington Square West Civic Association. I just want everyone to know that we are the oldest civic association here in Center City, established in 1935. Our community is deeply connected to the fabric of Center City and uniquely positioned to experience both the challenges and potential impacts of the proposed 76ers arena. I want to state where our borders are. Our borders are Market Street, the south side, to South Street, the north side, from Broad Street, the east side, to 7th Street, the west side. I also want to state on the record that for Washington Square West Civic Association, we were never consulted during the mayor's CBA, and as John Chin stated, we did not find out anything about that CBA until the day it was presented. As the president of the Civic Association, I represent a neighborhood rich in history, diversity, and vibrancy. Our community includes residents, along with students, small business owners, a Trauma One hospital, historic landmarks, and the heart of Philadelphia's neighborhood. This proposed arena is a project of great magnitude. However, we see significant risks that demand thoughtful consideration. I'm joined today by Peter Coe, as well as Katie Dillon Lowe, both valued board members of the Washington Square West Civic Association. Together, we bring the voices and concerns of our neighborhood to this hearing. It is important to note that after thorough discussion, the residents of Washington Square West, along with our Civic Association board, have voted against the proposed 76ers Arena on Market East. Everyone who's been following this project knows that we, as a civic association, are riding two horses. To be clear, on the one hand, we are already on the record that we are opposed to the arena going ahead, and we call on council members to vote against it. On the other hand, we are aware that if it does go ahead, there are going to be numerous negative consequences which will need to be addressed. So today, we will share our concerns briefly under 4 key areas should the arena go forward. These are community impact and livability, safety and public nuisance prevention, transit and traffic management, and representation of economic support. This arena proposal is not just about a building. It's about the community that surrounds it. Washington Square West is not an afterthought. It is a vital part of Philadelphia's cultural, economic, and historic landscape. Our neighborhood has spoken through their vote. We oppose the 76ers Arena on Market East as it stands. We are asking for collaboration, transparency, and a meaningful action to ensure our neighborhood remains vibrant, safe, and livable. I'm now going to ask Peter to start with our first area.
Thank you, Tammy, and thank you, council members, for this opportunity to speak. My name is Peter Coe. I'm a homeowner on the 1100 block of Spruce Street in the middle of the neighborhood. I've lived there since arriving in Philadelphia 3 years ago. I'm an active member of the neighborhood since I arrived and a member of 3 civic groups, including a board member of the Friends of Louis Kahn Park and for the past year a board director of the Washington Square West Civic Association, with a special responsibility as chair of the Action on Trash Committee, tackling the biggest daily challenge we face in Washington Square West, which is keeping the streets clean. To the point of community impact and livability, which Tammy has touched on, Washington Square West stands right on the edge of what could become a new stadium district. We believe the negative consequences of that proximity will be considerable, particularly for residents. Focusing on quality of life, we have a number of questions for council members as they consider this legislation. First of all, what measures will be implemented to prevent disruptions to livability in the neighborhood? For example, from additional noise, littering, and disruptive behavior from arena patrons. Parking opportunities for residents in our area are disappearing almost every day. Will residential parking protections, such as stricter time limits, be enacted to deter arena attendees from using neighborhood spaces? The unique historic character of Washington Square West has been recognized very recently by the creation of the Washington Square West Historic District. The protections that status provides is very welcome, but it only extends to its buildings, not to its residents and small businesses, which are at the heart of the community. What can the city do to ensure the character of our neighborhood is preserved, our residents are protected, and conditions are created in which those small businesses can survive and thrive? And then we look at expanding services. We believe the Stadium District, as it's being named, if it comes into being, should encompass not just the stadium, immediate area around the stadium, but the whole of Washington Square West and Chinatown, but Washington Square West as far as the north side of South Street, which is the southern limit of our boundaries. And this should include year-round trash and street cleaning services, which are equivalent to the service that City Centre District currently provides between Market and Locust Streets under a completely separate agreement. So will the city consider extending the bounds of a stadium district to include this whole area and without any extra burden on local taxpayers? Then we come to PATCO, and you may or may not be aware that the PATCO stations located on Locust Street run through the center of Washington Square West, and that they are an ongoing source of concern for residents due to poor maintenance and unclear accountability. With increased pedestrian traffic from PATCO riders heading to the events, these issues will only intensify. So we ask the city to provide clarification on who is ultimately responsible for the maintenance of these stations. And regardless of whether the arena is built, the responsible party must take immediate and sustained action to address maintenance issues, ensuring those stations remain clean, functional, and safe for all users. If the arena does proceed, then the city must also account for the increased pedestrian traffic to and from PATCO stations in its broader transit and safety planning for Washington Square West and the neighborhood. Because we're not just talking about Market Street. People who arrive at a stadium event, whatever that event is, are not necessarily going to come off at Market Street. So the questions that derive from this are: who is ultimately responsible for the maintenance of PATCO stations located in Washington Square West? What immediate steps will be taken to improve the condition of these stations, and to address long-standing issues like cleanliness, homeliness, and maintenance? And how will the city manage the anticipated increase in pedestrian traffic from PATCO riders? Thank you.
I'm going to speak briefly on safety and public nuisance. Washington Square West is a densely populated neighborhood that faces unique challenges during major events. Yet police presence is now low in our neighborhood and has been for many years. We urge city to increase police presence before, during, and after the arena. This includes visible foot and bike patrols, along with rapid response units to prevent and address disturbances in real time. The question of funding of these measures is critical. We ask for clarity on how additional safety resources will be financed without overburdening local taxpayers or diverting essential services from other areas of the city. So questions we have in regards to that is: what specific plans are in place to ensure increased police presence before, during, and after arena events in Washington Square West? And we want to make sure that PATCO is included in all of this, because again, it is a piece of land that runs directly through the center of our area. And so we have a lot of people coming and going from Locust Street to many other parts of the city. And if this arena comes, we will have a huger, more increase of pedestrians walking through this neighborhood. Will there be safety measures, including collaboration with the Civic Association for ongoing safety assessments and adjustments? Also, how does the city intend to fund these additional safety measures? I also want to talk about the LGBTQ community. Washington Square West is the home of Philadelphia's neighborhood, a cornerstone of the LGBTQ+ community. Philadelphia has been inviting the LGBTQ+ community from across the world here to Philadelphia to visit our neighborhood for over 20 years. Large influx of event attendees in the proposed arena raised concerns about maintaining a welcoming and safe environment for all. We are asking the city to implement measures that will safeguard LGBTQ+ residents and visitors from harassment, discrimination, and homophobic behavior. This will become even more vital during high-traffic areas on event days. To promote inclusivity and safety, the city should require educational programming for all arena security teams, Jefferson Police, Patco Police, and the Philadelphia Police, emphasizing cultural sensitivity towards diverse communities. So the types of questions we have are, how will the city ensure the safety of LGBTQ+ residents and visitors, especially during high-traffic event days? Will the city implement mandatory inclusivity training for arena security teams, Jefferson Police, and Patco Police, along with Philadelphia Police, to address harassment and discrimination concerns? Are there plans to be established a direct reporting system for incidents of harassment or discrimination in and around the arena? Lighting is another issue that we want to bring up. Key areas in Washington Square West, such as the number streets from 10th to 13th Street, all the way down to South Street, including residential areas and small streets, which serve as vital pedestrian thoroughfares. However, inadequate lighting proposes risks. So we strongly advocate for upgrading street lighting as well as business lighting in critical areas to enhance visibility and safety, particularly after dark. So our questions are, what plans does the city have to improve street lighting and business lighting and visibility in the key areas that I've just mentioned? And how will these improvements be prioritized and funded? I'm next turning it over to Katie, who's going to talk about transit.
Hello, my name is Katie Dillon Lowe. I'm a board member of the Washington Square West Civic Association. I am the community engagement coordinator. I've lived on Jewelers Row for 14 years as a renter. One of over 70% of the population of Wash West is renters. So, Washington Square West's small historic streets, many of them being single lane, are not equipped for the influx of traffic that would be expected of an arena event. The TIS clearly states that any more than 40% of attendees driving to the venue would cause traffic gridlock, affecting the quality of life of our residents, visitors to our neighborhood businesses, and potentially and most seriously, our hospitals. How can the city realistically hold the project owners, or even those who choose to drive, accountable so that the 40% of public transit usage can be achieved? What is the accountability plan? We have heard that neither the city nor the Sixers are planning to subsidize the extra trains that would be needed to accommodate the arena event goers and also to achieve that 40% attendee ridership on public transit. Wash West Civic joins with many of our council people who have already noted that a plan must be in place to support SEPTA and fund the needed trains before this project could possibly move forward. There could be up to 900 rideshare cars coming into the city, which would be divided into 3 rideshare drop-off locations, and one of them which is in Wash West. The proposed rideshare drop-off location is either the 900 or 1000 block of Chestnut Street, maybe both, which is less than 500 feet from Center City's only level 1 trauma center. Why was this location chosen given its close proximity to the hospital? Could we choose a different zone, such as Ludlow Street, which is not a highly trafficked street? How will rideshare pickup and drop-off zones actually be managed to avoid sidewalk crowding and traffic disruptions? And how would geofencing work? And would that prevent people who are unrelated to arena traffic from being able to call a ride in that zone? We just don't know. The 40% threshold for drivers into the city is repeated many times in the TIS. We know that multiple studied intersections fail PennDOT's rating system at 40% and even 30%. But the TIS modal split assumes that 10% of attendees will arrive for rideshare. But does that 10% of rideshare cars not bring the total number of cars coming into and then exiting the city up to 50%? This is unclear, and if it does raise that number of cars to 50%, that is a massive oversight in the transit traffic management plan. No intersections south of Chestnut Street, aside from Broad and Sansom, were studied, so we do not really know how traffic will impact the small streets of Washington Square West. But we do know there will be traffic in our neighborhood, arena traffic in our neighborhood, as a number of designated parking garages and lots are in Washington Square West. We hope to see in the near future the results of the Jefferson traffic study. Sharing those findings would help us understand the potential impacts to our neighborhood, and it could help alleviate some of the concerns that many of our neighbors have expressed about access to Jefferson's Level 1 Trauma Center, Stroke Center, Wills Eye Emergency Room, and the maternity ward at Pennsylvania Hospital.
Thank you, Katie. So, addressing our fourth area, we want to talk about representation and economic support, again, should the arena go ahead. And considering the significant ongoing impact that an arena is likely to have on Washington Square West, our neighborhood does need to have a voice in decision-making throughout the arena's lifetime, not just on one morning at council. So we can help ensure long-term oversight and accountability. We should also note that small businesses in our neighborhood are critical to our community's identity. So our remaining questions to the Council are first with regard to support for small businesses. What specific resources will the city provide to assist small businesses in Washington Square West that may experience disruptions from the arena during the construction period and beyond? And will the city support establishing a conservation zoning overlay for Washington Square West to preserve its historic character and promote local business retention? And finally, in terms of representation, the current oversight structure that's being proposed lacks adequate neighborhood input. Will Washington Square West receive a formal seat on the Arena District Board to ensure our long-term representation? So these are the four focus areas outlined by my colleagues and I, and they cover our most pressing concerns. We do have other concerns that, given the time limits this morning, we have not brought before you, but we can provide these to the Council in writing after this hearing if you wish. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for your testimony. For the record, the chair recognizes the presence of Majority Whip Thomas for this committee hearing. Are there any questions, colleagues, for this panel? The chair now recognizes Councilmember Gaudier.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Your neighborhood now has one of the biggest historic districts in the city. Can you tell us whether there's anything from your experience that we should be including in our conversation about how to preserve Chinatown?
Right now, our historic district is so new. It was literally just voted in a couple of months ago. We haven't had enough experience, I think, to know.
True. We are going to be speaking more with the Historical Commission on learning more about what we can and can't do as that historic district.
Got you. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the neighborhood. I saw in the Inquirer that 2 minority-owned LGBTQ establishments closed due to rising rents. What do you think about how the arena will help businesses due to additional tourism? Do you think that the arena will help businesses due to additional tourism, or do you think it will cause negative impacts?
At this point, we all feel that it would be a negative impact on our community moving forward.
I think I can also add that I've had informal conversations with members of the Association of Philly Tour Guides, and a number of them are very opposed to the project as well because of the impact they think it will have on particularly on historic Philly.
And what would you like to see in the community benefits agreement that could counteract some of these expected impacts?
We really don't want to speak about the CBA at this time because we are against this project. So if we start to try to negotiate, which we have not had an opportunity to even discuss with anyone at this time, it's not something that we would want to bring up right now.
I think we would also want to add that, like the Chinatown delegation, we believe that the CBA gross sum is grossly understated and completely inadequate for the negative consequences that are going to follow.
And we are not mentioned in it whatsoever.
When you say that you have not had an opportunity to provide input or comments on the CBA, can you expound on that?
We had no input whatsoever in regards to the CBA. We have only met with the mayor's administration once during these 2 years of this. So everything has not been discussed with us at all.
Have they reached out to you? Have you reached out to them? What has that looked like?
I was going to add that meeting, the formal meeting with the mayor's team was only very recent.
3 weeks ago, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
I'm sorry I had to step out for a second. Thank you, Majority Leader. Just for a point of information, have you met with the district council person regarding this particular project who represents Washington Square West?
Have we had meetings?
With Councilmember Mark Squilla, who represents your area, your neighborhood.
Yes.
Have you expressed any issues and concerns regarding the arena proposal to Councilmember Mark Squilla?
Yes, we have met with the councilman many, many times.
Okay. Are any of the things you have expressed to him are reflected in the current community benefits agreement and or his arena district proposal?
Well, again, we haven't had in-depth conversations in regards to the CBA with anyone. We have brought up concerns with the councilman, but have not gone into any detail.
Okay, thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilmember Mark Squilla.
Thank you. Just a point of information is, again, sort of like Chinatown, there was no interest in speaking about a CBA from Washington Square West. I think what I did the best I can is that listening to what those concerns are, understanding we heard about cleaning, lighting, security, and other things, and how they were going to be part of the CBA. But there was no ask to say that this is our request in the CBA because the community was opposed to the project. And so we took the same tact as we did with the Chinatown community and did what we did as fought to introduce and amend the CBA to include some of those things. And I just want to add, I know you mentioned the I think the safety security headquarters that would be at 11th and Market is part of the CBA that would be funded by the arena to develop that, and that would be for event days and evenings that would include PACO, SEPTA, Center City District, then the police department that would man those facilities and have them for all event days, working out the logistics through Jefferson also, who has security at the time to work through that. But these conversations that I had with the community were related in what I presented as we introduced the CBA, but there was no negotiations as far as this needs to be in the CBA for us to support it because they were opposed.
Correct.
That's great.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony. Well, Mr. Christmas, please call the next panel.
Mr. Arthur Acolin, Dominic Vicello, Paul Heaton, Lorenzo Cannon Umstead, Alex Jen, please come forward, take a seat at the microphones, the desk.
Hello, how you doing? Just state your name for the record and please begin your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Arthur Acolin. I'm a real estate professor at the University of Washington in Seattle, and before that, I lived in Philadelphia for over a decade. I love this city and hope to be able to live here again in the future. I believe that private investment is needed on East Market Street. I also believe in serious data and analysis to support investment decisions. I have not seen that being produced in support of the proposed arena. Analysis and assumptions that should have been made public over the last 2 years to back up the figures presented by 76 Sisters remain undisclosed. The economic impact study commissioned by PIDC, which is largely based on input from the 76 Sisters, also lacks key details. And despite the repeated inquiries from this body to release them, the report remains undisclosed. It's kind of hard to imagine what trade secrets or rather what undefensible assumptions are in this report that we still don't really know how those figures were derived and where they come from. However, there is convincing evidence that the proposed 76 place could cause substantial harm to existing businesses. These negative impacts are not properly accounted for at this stage. In particular, it's important to take seriously the community impact study commissioned by PIDC, which, as has been emphasized earlier today already, indicate that 50% of the over 300 businesses in Chinatown alone are expected to experience a net negative impact. And only 20% of the 300 businesses are expected to see a net positive impact, with the other 30% experiencing mixed impact. This means that 76 Place represents a crucial tax base and economic engine for the city of Philadelphia and the state of Pennsylvania. The disruption and eventual loss of small and mid-sized businesses in the area could have long-lasting negative consequences for Center City and beyond. And somehow those negative consequences were not incorporated into the economic impact study or used as a basis for the CBA. At the same time, the pilot and use and occupancy agreements represent major tax subsidies that add to the bottom line of the team's owner without being available to other businesses in the city. Overall, the tax subsidies the city is offering the team represent over $500 million between now and 2062, with little tax benefit for the city and school district until 2032. In deciding whether or not to support the project, the city should be clear that this represents large subsidies from city's taxpayers to build this arena that are not available to other for-profit businesses in the area. The fact that previous sport venues have received similarly beneficial tax treatment does not make it good policy, does not make it good economic and urban development policy. Meanwhile, according to the community impact study, the small businesses in Chinatown that will be negatively affected by the arena have seen their property taxes increase by 68% from 2014 to 2023, and their use and occupancy payment increased by 46% from 2015 to 2023. Based on this community impact study data, Chinatown businesses alone contribute over $600,000 in use and occupancy payment annually. And another 68 businesses on Market East contribute another $1.2 million in use and occupancy tax payments. This is substantially more than the $500,000 payment that the 76 place will finally start paying in 2032. A negotiated amount that is even lower than what the $620,000 Wells Fargo Center advantageous use and occupancy payments are today. With such a high cost for the existing community and limited tax benefit, the city might want to consider alternative projects that invest and operate in synergy with the existing tax base rather than jeopardize it. Local businesses and workers generate significant contribution to the local economy that are not easily replaced. In closing, the evidence today indicates substantial risk and little guaranteed return associated with this project for the surrounding neighborhood and for Philadelphia at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Just state your name for the record and please begin your testimony, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Dominic Vitiello. I'm a professor of city planning and urban studies at Penn, and I've lived in Philadelphia for 50 years since I was one. I do a lot of work in Africatown, Chinatown, and many other communities around Philadelphia. So the proposed arena has been touted by its backers as a real boon for economic development and a way to spark revitalization on East Market Street. But in reality, arenas are a bad form of economic development, especially for downtowns. This is a bad deal in so many ways. There is a broad consensus among independent economists around this country that arenas and stadiums do not add net tax revenue and other economic benefits to cities. And if you just heard the subsidy figures that the city is proposing to give to the 76ers, I think you can appreciate why. So if the support in this room for this arena proposal is about jobs, I think my most important message about jobs is that there are other, much better ways to get many more jobs in construction on East Market Street, in South Philadelphia, and elsewhere. And my father was a member of unions for his entire life. I obviously work in a non-union shop. But I want to use the rest of my testimony to talk about the ways in which arenas do not revitalize downtowns. Instead, they generally have the opposite effect. And we've seen this in American cities writ large. The areas around the downtown arenas and stadiums from Seattle to New Orleans to Chicago to Washington, D.C. are dead zones on non-game days. And on game days, their crowds disrupt nearby businesses and residential neighborhoods. Philadelphia has a vibrant downtown, a 24/7 downtown increasingly. Today, we have the second largest residential population of any US downtown. And one of the main reasons our downtown population and its tax base has grown in recent decades is that Center City has a human scale with neighborhoods that have dense ecosystems of small businesses serving residents and visitors alike. And an arena would do tremendous damage to these businesses and the broader vitality of Center City. The proposed arena threatens to reverse the growth that we have experienced, with huge consequences for the city's broader tax base and economy, because downtown vitality affects the entire city's economy. Small businesses rely on regular foot traffic, and many, as you've heard in testimony today, also depend on easy automobile access and parking for customers and delivery drivers. Pre- and post-event traffic at the proposed arena would decimate these businesses in the neighborhoods on both sides of Market Street, causing many to close entirely. And arenas, to a question Councilmember Gauthier asked a moment ago, right, internalize spending, right? They capture as much spending as possible, really rarely benefiting nearby small businesses that aren't in adult entertainment or some other things that we evidently don't want to encourage, right? So the great majority of so-called downtown NBA arenas are actually on the edge of downtowns. They are next to highways and large parking facilities and not in the heart of downtowns. Other cities have been really wise to keep arenas out of the heart of their downtowns. Instead, the purpose-built stadium and arena districts that they have developed, which I know some of you have studied recently, as has our mayor, when done well, they include a mix of compatible uses, typically much larger businesses and not the small shops and small residences that predominate in Center City and make it the interesting, vibrant place that it is. I also want to stress that no CBA or stadium district or other measures you can take will truly mitigate the disruptive and damaging effects on our downtown if we build an arena, including the livability and economic vitality of Chinatown, the neighborhood, Washington Square West, and surrounding neighborhoods. And yes, I know Councilmember Jones has stepped out. Neighborhoods around our city are experiencing gentrification, but only one of them is being targeted by an arena, which is a fundamentally different proposal for land use and neighborhood economies. So you have a clear choice, in my view, between the proposed arena and preserving and enhancing the vitality of these neighborhoods from the inevitable disruption that arenas have on residential and small-scale commercial neighborhoods. Please do not deceive yourselves into believing you can preserve the vitality of our downtown if you allow this arena to be built. Thank you.
State your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Hi, I'm Paul Heaton. I'm a professor of law at the University of Pennsylvania. I also have a PhD in economics. If you look at the text of bill number 240966, it claims that the arena will create thousands of construction jobs and hundreds of permanent jobs in the city. However, the economic impact studies used to support these claims are deeply flawed. City Council should not rush to approve this legislation when you've not been given a complete, accurate accounting of the economic effects of the arena. The impact studies are flawed in at least 3 ways. First, they claim to assess net impacts, but actually completely ignore significant economic costs and harms from the arena. For example, later today you'll hear from SEPTA that they anticipate tens of millions of startup costs and tens of millions of annual continuing costs for operations associated with the arena. None of those costs are included in the economic impact study. Those are costs that will have to be borne by SEPTA's customers or city or state taxpayers, again, not in the economic impact study. We know that if we don't meet the transit target of 40%, the city's own studies say that that's going to create substantial gridlock. But again, there's no calculation of the economic costs of that lost mobility. The studies also ignore the opportunity costs of other potential useful uses for the Market East parcel, as well as potential expanded redevelopment of the South Philly Sports Complex. It's quite possible that alternatives to the arena could actually generate even more jobs and more city tax revenue than what's been proposed here, but you haven't been given information about alternatives. I'll also note that these studies have serious methodological problems. As one example, no one seriously thinks that the Wells Fargo Center is going to actually get more events and more business if the arena is built. But if you look carefully at the CSL study, what you'll see is that all of the comparable cities that it used to build its jobs estimate were cities where the existing arenas actually gained business after a new arena was built. In a lot of ways, this study reminds me, and it has similar problems to the study that was shared with this council back in 2015 when you were asked to approve the Fashion District Mall. If you go back to that study, you were told that the mall was going to generate 1,400 new jobs. I think we know how that turned out. And so if you approve this, right, I think you can understand that it's going to generate many, many fewer jobs than you've been promised by the Sixers and by CSL. Finally, I'll just point out that taken on its own terms, the CSL study tells us that the arena is going to create significant economic harm. So if you look in the tiny fine print on page 60, the study gives us the startling estimate that 41% of the arena's total revenues will be cannibalized from existing city businesses or leak out of the city. So by their calculations, that's about $75 million per year. So if you approve the arena, what you're going to be doing is having hundreds of millions of dollars that would go to existing city businesses today that end up getting transferred over to Harris Blitzer and Live Nation. Now, if I were you, I would probably want to know before voting on the arena, like, what are the businesses in my district that are going to lose revenue, that may have to downsize as a result of the arena? But the economic impact studies you have really hide the ball on these issues. So just to summarize, I really don't think you want to vote to risk our Chinatown unless you know for sure that this project is going to be a net win for the city, but you're missing really critical facts and data that you need to make that determination. Thanks.
Thank you. State your name for the record and please begin your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Alex Chin. I hold a PhD in history from Princeton University, where I'm currently a postgraduate research associate. I am a resident of Chinatown North and have lived in Philly for around 7 years. So like everyone else on this panel, I believe in the need for a revitalized Market East for the future of Philadelphia. History has shown, however, that grand magic bullet construction projects are never the solution. Back in the 1960s and 70s, for example, the Vine Street Expressway was touted as a pivotal infrastructure project that would bring back much-needed jobs and commerce to a city struggling from post-war deindustrialization. Under the guise of urban renewal, highway projects were said to be literal lifelines into the city that would shepherd in money back from the suburbs. We know today that I-676 has not only done little to alleviate congestion in the city, but also had largely negative economic impacts in how its construction disrupted regular business and cut communities apart. The recently awarded $158.9 million federal transportation grant for the Chinatown Stitch is, after all, an implicit acknowledgement of the economic and social harms the highway had on downtown Philadelphia. What I find especially troubling about the 76ers proposal is how economically and scientifically unserious it is. Arthur has already touched on some of the economic losses, both to Chinatown and to the city, especially in terms of lost tax revenue that would amount to close to $600 million over the next 30 years. We also know that the 76ers have a history of false advertising and failing to live up to their promises. Just 8 years ago, the 76ers built a practice facility in Camden in exchange for an $82 million tax break from the New Jersey State Legislature. There, the 76ers touted how a practice facility would not only generate more jobs, but also revitalize all of downtown Camden. As of 2023, the 76ers employ only 11 Camden residents out of its 275 employees there, which amount to 4% of its overall workforce. And the area surrounding the practice facility remains destitute. In 2022, New Jersey's Economic Development Authority went as far as revoking part of the 76ers tax break in Camden because the practice facility had failed to live up to its promises of job creation. As the acting state comptroller, Kevin Walsh, said at the time, quote, "It is easy for a business looking for tax credits to promise results, but harder to deliver." The question facing council today is whether we want the city of Philadelphia and its many taxpayers to foot the bill for yet another grandiose infrastructure project unlikely to generate real economic growth, built by and for billionaires with a track record of failing to live up to their promises. Thank you.
Just state your name for the record and please begin your testimony.
Thank you, Council President, Council, to my organizing colleagues here in chambers today, neighbors, workers, and the people of the city of Philadelphia. Good afternoon. My name is Lorenzo P. Cannon Umstead, and I'm from 215 People's Alliance and Black Philadelphians for Chinatown. Lastly, I'm a 3rd District constituent. Good to see you today, Council Member. I oppose Bill number 240966. Before speaking directly to this bill, just a little bit about myself, for those that wonder. I'm the Northeast organizer of 215 People's Alliance, which is a multiracial working class organization, building people power across the whole of Philadelphia. As an organizer in our city, I have experienced organizing alongside and facilitating to youth in all high school types around our city, public, charter, private, parochial, however I want to do it. I also have experience working for our streets department, cleaning out our alleyways and our blocks and lots that were less desirable to address and physically work on based on the conditions of those during that time. To these issues, I have placed my feet directly on our land. I have worked in warehouses, receiving mass deliveries to feed people in the city. I am no stranger to labor. I love labor organizing, and I love a good labor organizing struggle. But when that labor organizing struggle is just, and when the politics of said labor struggle has a dialectical, materialist lens, intentional or otherwise. Currently at 215 People's Alliance, we are trying to address trash cleanup and short dumping in our city as it pertains to a cleaner and greener Philadelphia. One thing I'm having a bit of trouble with is that a new state-of-the-art arena, right, an NBA arena on Market Street, how will that contribute to a cleaner and greener Philadelphia? I'm thinking about food waste, plastics, and other waste materials from the pro shops. Has the extra labor that is needed to keep Market Street clean on game days been considered? People will choose to tailgate or pregame if they see fit, as people do in the city, in our neighborhood residential areas in Market East. Have all of our city branches considered this? And, pardon me if it's been mentioned, and this may be somewhat of a moot point to some based on the institution, but the time that I have dedicated to this hearing and watching this hearing, I have yet not heard the fact that the very land we are debating over, a charter school, sits across the street from it. Now, I realize this charter school is not within our public district, right? But it is a school with Philadelphian youth who sit in that building every day during the school year. Now, I wonder if there has been any attempts made to form an open and direct relationship with schools and youth programs in our city, especially to those middle and high school institutions that have basketball teams. Have the 76ers reached out to get with these youth and programs to provide them with resources? Especially the schools that will be in geographic proximity to this proposed arena. What impactful or ancillary benefits does this provide to our youth in this city? How will their day-to-day lives be affected by the Market Street construction? And I can kind of recall some years back, I went to West Philadelphia Catholic High School. I'm also, a West Philadelphia resident. In the late 2000s, during the SEPTA reconstruction, our lives as West Catholic students and West Philadelphia High School students, the public school, all of our lives in the neighborhoods of West Poughton, Sunset Park, were all affected by that construction during that time in the late 2000s. Excuse me, Walnut Hill, pardon me. As this hearing continues, I've urged all of us in these chambers, those of us watching on stream, on Channel 64, or even those watching on the YouTube playback, please consider some serious answers to these questions. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Councilmember O'Rourke.
What I'm hearing from, I'm sorry, good morning.
Member O'Rourke, please speak into the microphone, please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome.
And good morning to all the panelists. What I'm hearing from this panel is a lot of evidence that this is a bad deal, maybe even worse than we already realized. Other members have, throughout the course of listening, have raised points. The extremely high cost to local businesses, potential tax subsidy handout of almost $600 million, and huge burden on SEPTA are just not worth the poorly supported claims. As I said last week, really it's bets is kind of how it's turning out to be, of this economic development for Market East. That having been said, I actually agree, citywide thinking that development of Market East is ideal. So what types of alternative projects would lead to a healthy redevelopment of Market East in your assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert. I think we've heard a lot of different proposals, a biosciences hub. We heard earlier today about proposals for a small business incubator. Ultimately, I think it's obviously the role of this council to make those decisions. I guess what troubles me is, the Sixers want an arena. You have one option before you, and it seems like the choice is kind of either take our option or, go home. And I think really the right way to think about that is to think about trade-offs, right? What are the values and benefits of this option as compared to other things that we might do? And I guess what bothers me about the economic impact studies that you've been given is that they don't really think about alternatives. There may be a deal that's actually better for unions, that generates more city tax revenue, but that doesn't have these harms to Chinatown, but that's not something that you've been given information about.
So I think almost any other use would be less disruptive than a stadium or an arena that brings many thousands of people at the same time, internalizes their spending, sends the profits to New York or somewhere else, and then sends everybody away without benefiting the rest of our downtown and our city. The East Market development, which many of the people in the room I think are familiar with, in the 1100 block of East Market Street on the south side, cost over $1 billion to build. It's a mixed-use, high-rise, luxury apartment building or buildings that created extra little streets that are very vibrant. Every single, Arthur went through there this morning, every single retail space is rented. Jefferson Hospital takes up part of it. That's over $1 billion to renovate, redevelop one block of Market Street. Right? There are some other available surface parking lots, right, with nothing to knock down on at least a couple of other blocks of East Market Street. We could build similar things, right? I've been saying for 2 years, right, if you know what Photoshop is, right, it's a way to play with photographs and sort of, manipulate images, right? We could just sort of Photoshop the East Market Street redevelopment onto this block of the Fashion District, and we'd have a much healthier sort of development, mixed use with just as many jobs, right, and maybe better jobs too, right, for our downtown. It'd be, I can go on about this, but I think almost anything else. And we lack, I think, I'm not accusing you of this, right, because this is now, right, this has been put, in front of you recently, right, but I think we've lacked a fair bit of imagination about what could go on East Market Street. It's been well more than a decade since the City Planning Commission produced a plan for East Market Street. Let's imagine something different, right? We can be creative. I know you all can, right? In imagining something better for our city that creates more jobs and better jobs. And I can go on, but I hope I've answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The chair recognize. Are you going to say the same thing?
Yeah, could I just add really quickly that all of these potential features, which is a sort of under-remarked part of the legislation, will be foreclosed by the building of the arena, right? Currently, the way that the legislation stands, they're going to be handing over this land to the city, which they will then, quote, rent, right, for $10. They're not going to be paying any property taxes or use and occupancy taxes, which again amounts to over a $600 million tax subsidy. And at the end of their 30-year lease, as long as they meet certain requirements, they have the opportunity to buy that land, right? The city will no longer, after giving them this for free, have the opportunity to use that land for all of these other opportunities. It's a land grab.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilmember Rulandow.
Thank you, Council President. Arthur, you spoke a little fast for us. So I would like you, if you could, go back, tell us just for a second a little bit about yourself and tell us, please, what you calculated as the tax consequences and how you got there.
Yes. I'm Arthur Collin. I'm an associate professor of real estate at the University of Washington in Seattle. And my accent is from France, not from the West Coast.
I got you.
The calculation, if you just kind of, if you think about that project, right? Like traditionally, 30 years ago, when you were doing this kind of deals, the city was providing land, they were providing a lot of funding, they were providing a lot of direct advantages. Over time, there has been that change toward having some negotiated agreement and a little bit more shifting toward the teams. But the teams are still getting fantastic tax breaks. And in this case, when you look at the payment in lieu of taxes for the property tax, when you look at the use and occupancy agreement, you can just think about a project that is worth conservatively $1 billion when they have finished it. And you can assume that if it was any other project, like East Market, after 10 years, they would be paying property tax at the full rate. They are already paying use and occupancy tax. And if you apply those same formula that you're applying to all other properties, you can estimate what that development will generate in taxes. And you can just make the difference between what the pilot agreement and the use and occupancy agreements are contributing versus what that will be contributing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your informative testimony. Members, I know we're coming up amongst lunch, but I want to push through this last panel, and then we'll break for lunch, because we're going to have a long day regardless. And so, Mr. Christmas, could you please call the next panel? And also, for the record, I want to acknowledge the presence of Councilmember Isaiah Thomas, and also recognize the Councilmember Minority Leader Kendra Brooks, who are also present.
Would you, Lynn, Debbie Law, Annie Lowe, Eric Law, and Mike Hobb please come forward?
Ladies first. I guess I'm going first.
Just state your name for the record and please begin your testimony.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Michael, and I'm the owner of QT Vimini Sandwich Shop. That's 3 doors down from the Greyhound bus terminal. My wife and I opened the shop about, I don't know, about 15 years ago, about 2010 roughly. And we're, you know.
Excuse me, sir, just real quick. Can we take all conversations, sidebar conversations out the chamber, please?
I'll make it quick, I promise. I gotta go pick up my kid, so.
Then take your time. Go ahead, sir.
So, first of all, I just want to say that, you know, when this proposal was presented, they were saying that, you know, the people from the public would come in and they would frequent Chinatown prior to the game and eat our food and enjoy the culture and stuff. But in reality, that's not the case, because most people are rushing to the arena. Most people want to, when you go to a game at any game, you know, you're not thinking about, for instance, my hoagies, my banh mi's, which I would think that about 50% of people sitting here today don't even know what it is. So we're a niche market, and the reason we're in Chinatown is because we serve authentic Asian cuisines. Now, when you come to game night, you're not thinking about authentic food. You're thinking about cheesesteaks. You think about hot dogs. You're thinking about beer and pizza.
Excuse me, point of information. I'm vegetarian, so.
Well, we have vegetarian food too. We serve banh mi.
My wife took me to Chinatown a couple times. I told you, you know, a little bit of tofu, seitan.
Well, you should stop by our shop. I mean, we can introduce you to banh mi, and
but go ahead,
you
sir.
don't know what that is.
Go ahead, sir.
And I'm more than happy to serve anyone a banh mi and just explain the history of banh mi, and just, you know, by the look at some of people's faces, they are just, you know, they don't know what the hell the banh mi is. But it's a hoagie.
Excuse me,
sir. It's a Vietnamese version of a hoagie.
Please don't make assumptions and stereotypes about all
I'm
black
sorry.
folks don't eat chicken.
I'll stick to the facts then. I'll stick to the
My wife
facts.
showed me the banh mi sandwiches, so I'm familiar with the banh mi sandwiches, so is my children. Just
okay.
letting you know.
I got that. So okay, so going to the next part then. So the traffic, the noise, and the pollution that's going to be generated from the construction will most likely push out customers, because my place is, you know, it's a takeout joint. So if there's noise, pollution, and everything else that's associated with the construction, you know, it's going to adversely affect our business. Our delivery guys won't even come into our facility, because why would they spend the extra amount of minutes that's needed to get it into our place, wait for the food to be ready, and then head back out, where there's, I don't know, God knows how much construction that's going on, how much noise and pollution and everything else that can, you know, affect their delivery time and quality of the food. So we know that that's just not something that we would want. And QT has probably been supporting the Unite Here workers at the picket lines and feeding them and making sure that the people that truly value our presence in Chinatown are given food to do what they need to do. And even though, even through all the decades of the abuse and intolerances that immigrants have faced in our community has been here for over 150 years. We started here on Race Street, not by choice, but because the powers that be said that we can only dwell in the slums with the individuals that were deemed unacceptable by society. We were allowed to raise our children, they said, but only in areas that were so dangerous, so despicable, and so impoverished, but nowhere else. Through it all, we rose, we worked, we learned, and we built. We thrived through the worst conditions, but today I am here saddened by what it means to be blue. We didn't lose this election because America is racist. We lost this election because you have forsaken us. You have forsaken all the communities that make up America. You put forth the profit of a franchise that's only been in existence for about 50 years over a community that has supported you for 150 years. I'm not sitting here and begging you to reconsider. I'm sitting here with the spirits of your forefathers, asking you to remember the struggles and the sacrifices that your ancestors have made. Don't let greed, ego, and ill-conceived notions of a legacy cloud your judgment. Don't let corporations use you in the name of progress. Thank you, and God bless America.
Just state your name for the record and please begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Annie Lowe, and I'm a legal fellow at the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, or ALDEF for short. ALDEF is a 50-year-old organization that fights to secure the civil rights of Asian Americans and communities of color across the country, and we represent Asian Americans United, one of the leadership organizations of the Save Chinatown Coalition. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the arena, which ALDEF views as an existential threat to Chinatown. ALDEF works in Chinatowns and other communities of color across the Northeast to advocate for zoning protections and planning decisions that protect the right of low-income and immigrant communities to live in safe and affordable environments, including in New York and Massachusetts. In Philadelphia, we are dismayed that the city's review of the arena proposal has fallen so short of these counterparts, especially when the arena will severely harm a historic community of color. Today, ALDEF urges you to reject the enabling legislation for the following reasons. First, the legislation fails to mitigate the clearly identified negative impacts the arena will have on Chinatown's future economic viability. Second, at every step of the way, from the proposal of the arena site to the hasty introduction and consideration of legislation, the Chinatown community has been excluded and sidelined. Finally, the legislation lacks key details related to the enforceability of the arena agreement and potential financial obligations of all Philadelphia residents. Though we need not look further than the city's own impact studies to understand the arena's harm, ALDEF's analysis confirms that Philadelphia's Chinatown is at a critical inflection point and cannot withstand the arena's construction. We undertook a comprehensive land use survey of Philadelphia's Chinatown 10 years ago and are currently working on an updated report a decade later. Even our preliminary findings now show that Chinatown's commercial uses have dropped from 53% to only 37% of the neighborhood's overall land uses in the past decade. Of those businesses that remain, over 90% are small businesses or local chains. So when the city's study projects harm to 50 to possibly 80% of Chinatown businesses, we know who will disproportionately bear the consequences: Asian small business owners, and as we heard earlier, low-wage workers of color. We question why this city council would even consider approving a project with such a stark and disparate racial impact. And as for the mitigation, it's clear that the CBA falls woefully short of what this entire city needs. The Sixers need to offer much more than $50 million over 30 years in order to come close to mitigating the impact of the arena and supporting the entire city's needs. Additionally, for over 2 years, Chinatown has encountered a lack of transparency, a pattern of exclusion from the deliberative process, and a disregard for standards of planning that major cities should use to make large-scale development decisions. The city, including council member offices, has rejected dozens of the Save Chinatown Coalition's right-to-know requests for basic information about government meetings with the Sixers and other agencies, though they are now eager to distribute lists of meetings with Chinatown advocates to you. The zoning overlay proposal for Chinatown introduced last week outside of the scope of these hearings feels par for the course of how aspects of this proposal have been rolled out without any pretense that public input from Chinatown is valued. Finally, the legislation lacks critical information, including the underlying sublease agreement between Paid and the Sixers. Without this document, City Council does not have access to the city's full legal and financial obligations under the deal. We do not have a complete picture of the city's potential enforcement mechanisms and the terms under which they may be pursued. And while the agreement precludes the use of the city's capital funds, city and state resources could clearly still be implicated in indirect ways through maintenance, policing, transit, and other operational costs. Language in the term sheet even allows the possibility for CBA funds to be used for, quote, substantially similar purposes instead of the enumerated provisions. So for the foregoing reasons, ALDEF urges City Council to reject the arena legislation. The future of Chinatown depends on your actions to save it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. State your name for the record. Please begin your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Su Lin. I am a small business owner in Chinatown. My family and I started a restaurant in 2015. It's half of a block from the proposed arena. I grew up in Chinatown and now live in South Philly with my family. I still have I have 12 family members who still live in Chinatown. Most of them have jobs in the community. I have 2 kids aged 8 and 4, both go to schools in Chinatown. My community is here in Chinatown. I lived here for 10 years. When I first came, I didn't speak any English. Chinatown was the place I could find a shelter, a place where I didn't have to worry about how I looked or what language I spoke. I had 2 good friends from high school. They are Mexican Americans. They used to hang out in Chinatown all the time. When I asked them why they go to Chinatown so often, they said, it's simple. We don't always have to watch our backs, and the food is not expensive. I share their experience in that sense. Chinatown is diverse, friendly, with affordable food, and full of cultural events. It attracts not only people in the city, but also people from the suburbs. It helps the city's economy by tax revenues and job creations. We chose to open our restaurant in Chinatown because of everything I mentioned. It is not a big restaurant, but we employ about 20 people, both part-time and full-time. When the arena proposal was announced, we looked into other Chinatowns in the country where big developments came into Chinatown. These Chinatowns either disappeared or barely survive. When the community is not there, the small businesses either have to shut down or relocate. It took years to build a business with some kind of stability. We went through the pandemic, labor shortage, and the inflation. I don't think we could survive the arena. The 6 years of construction alone will kill my business. My customers will not want to sit in my restaurant where road closures, noises, and air pollution are always an issue. Parking and traffic is already an issue. The Sixers said that they will have to shut down both 10th and 11th Streets for a period of time whenever they have games. it will make things much worse, not only for small businesses in the area, but all the residents here. I have 2 young kids. They are biracial, but they pass for Asian. So their lifelong struggle, you know, one of them will be people asking them where are they coming from. I want Chinatown to be there, you know, and say, you know, our people have been here. We have roots here, and Chinatown is an active resistance to racism, you know. I'm not opposed to the arena. I'm opposed to the choice of location that doesn't make any sense. I ask you to stop the arena at this location for my business, my family, and my community. Thank you.
State your name for the record and please begin your testimony. You dropped something out. You dropped something too.
Good afternoon. My name is Debbie Law. I was born and raised in Philadelphia's Chinatown. I'm a proud alumni of McCall Elementary School, Philadelphia High School for Girls, McCall, Philadelphia High School for Girls, and Penn State University.
What class is it like? Is it like 251 or
no numbers here. No numbers here.
How y'all? Central. Oh, okay, got you. All right.
Yes.
Girls High.
And I still live in Chinatown. My late grandfather came to the U.S. in the 70s. He opened the Imperial Inn restaurant, if some of you recall. It's one of the longest running Chinese restaurants serving authentic dim sum in Philly's Chinatown. It's closed now, but some of you might recall it. My family has been in Chinatown for generations. I'm 3rd generation here. Chinatown has always been a place I called home. It's a community of mine. My family and relatives have opened shops and restaurants in Chinatown. We're very invested in the community. I want to piggyback off one experiment. I just dropped something. I want to ask people in this room, do they know what this is? Does anybody know? This is a red envelope. Something this small holds a very cultural significance, importance in our lives. And Chinese people and Asian Americans, you know. So my question to you is, do you know where you can get one of these in Chinatown? Or anywhere besides Amazon? Anybody? You walk down 10th Street, the main street of Chinatown. There's not one shop that sells it. And I'm going to tell you why. Again, my family and relatives have shops in Chinatown. 2 of these small businesses has already been impacted by the proposal of the arena. I'm going to speak about one shop, particularly because it's the one that's mostly impacted. It's called Chinese Culture and Arts. It was one of the last stores standing that sells cultural artifacts, such as red envelopes, lanterns, teacups, Buddha statues, and it's not just for Asian people. Other people came to Chinatown for it, right? We also carry books, magazines, CDs, newspapers, that's all in Chinese. It's a language that's familiar to people in my community, and it's stuff that you can't really find anywhere else besides online right now. That shop didn't just sell Chinese goods. It also served as a resource hub for people within the community. We had 3x5 cards hanging on our store window that advertise where they can find housing, where they can find jobs, where they can find nannies, where they can find a doctor, where they can find help finding immigration papers, right? These were all information written in language that they can understand. It was like a public square. When newer immigrants come to Chinatown, they would come into my shop, my family shop, and ask, hey, where can I find a doctor that speaks my language? Where can I find people who can help me fill out my paperwork? Where can I find insurance? Where can I find a school for my kid. You know, it was more than just a shop. It was a place where people congregated and shared information. It was a community. During the pandemic, our store was deemed essential because we sold newspaper, Chinese newspaper, that provided information for people. As the world was trying to figure out how to handle the pandemic and all the chaos that it was creating, we served as an information center, right, for people who were vulnerable. People came into our shop because they didn't understand what was going on. We stayed open throughout the pandemic. We provided gloves, hand sanitizer, face mask for people within the community, as well as other people who's willing to come in, and for small businesses in Chinatown. We had newspaper from China and Hong Kong telling them what's going on back in their country. Unfortunately, this store was displaced. And this just provides you with what's going to happen if the arena is going to get built. We were located on 10th Street, the main street of Chinatown. We were 50 feet away from where that Chinatown arch is, known as the Friendship Gate. That big arch that people think about Chinatown, we were 50 feet away from it. We're no longer there. We were forced out. I'm going to tell you why. Our lease was up for a 10-year renewal. We were there for 35 years. Leases come 5, 10, 15 years. Up for renewal, and we tried to negotiate with the landlord for a year and a half. And the landlord came back to us and said, well, an investor is willing to pay 3 times the amount you're paying, as well as a renewal or a sign-on fee, and then that they're going to rent out the entire building. We can't compete 3 times the rent. We can't compete with somebody who's going to rent out the entire building. We're a small business again. Ultimately, we lost our space because the landlord wanted more money. Now these rich investors are holding on to this building, not to provide any other small business, but they're waiting for the opportunity to make even more money for franchises, for bigger businesses. These are called investors, right? These are predators who's preying on my community. I lived above that store, so I was displaced. This happened to me, and this will happen to other people. People will get priced out, and that's just reality. Now my shop sits on 11th Street. It's less than half the size. There's no foot traffic. We face the back of the convention center. That small street, that 11th Street, that nobody hears about, yeah, we're there. But 80% of our business has dropped. We had 3 to 4 employees that we had hired. We're down to 1 because the business was just that bad because of our location, by the way, not anything else. Not everyone knows that we relocated. People from the northeast of South Philly come to Chinatown, they look for our shop, they can't find it because we're no longer at that location that we were for 35 years. My neighbors around me that used to be an arts and crafts shop, another porcelain shop, they're no longer there neither. Like I said, we were one of the last standing business in Chinatown that sold cultural significance items. Give me a second. The proposed arena would be incredibly harmful to my store, especially to elderly customers. These senior citizens come from all over Philadelphia because it's a sense of familiarity for them. Some of them even walk daily from South Philly to Chinatown just so they can speak to somebody that speaks their own language. It reminds them of a place like back home, like China, you know, people are just that friendly. Again, we were like one of the only stores left with Chinese newspaper and information in their native language. Some of them ask me, what will happen if the arena's built? And I say, I don't know, but hopefully we'll still be here. But I can't guarantee that we will be. I'm not even sure if our business can survive this 6-year construction. I heard that last night at the meeting with Councilman Squilla that there's going to be money set aside for impact on the construction, right? What does that pay for? Are you going to pay for the loss in revenue? Are you paying for my employee wages? Are you paying for my rental payment? What does that fund pay for? And if there's 150 businesses in Chinatown, are you going to pay for everybody's loss in whatever you're supposed to pay for, or is it just like $1,000? Here you go. $1,000 is not even somebody's salary. And is this money split with the rest of the arena district? I don't understand that. I'm sorry, I don't. And then these 76er people are saying that, oh, we're going to bring business to Chinatown. We're going to bring business to Center City. Well, my shop is a small mom and pop shop. These people who go to games aren't going to come to my shop. They're not going to buy the red envelope. They're not going to buy teacups, right? Maybe to other businesses, great for them, you know. I'm not a restaurant, I'm not a bar. I'm not gonna see any positive out of this for myself. We're gonna lose even the smallest amount of customer we already have. Because you ask them why, they say, I don't wanna come because of the traffic, because of parking. And it's so crowded, why would I even come down there? Even on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, you see how crowded Chinatown is. People are going to be deterred from coming to Chinatown if the arena is built. This displacement has already happened to me, and I'm surviving displacement right now, but I can't imagine other small businesses, you know, surviving this. And so I urge council, and you guys are people in position of power, to help us and to vote no on the arena. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Chair recognizes Councilman Jamie Gauthier.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. First, I wanted to say that to the woman that was just speaking, I'm really sorry about the loss of your previous business and your home. And we've mostly been talking about the economic impact of the arena, but I agree with Councilmember Ahmad that we also have to consider if displacement occurs, that there's an economic impact that we're losing with the loss of Chinatown, and any CBA has to mitigate that. I wanted to ask some questions about engagement. We've been hearing conflicting reports about whether or not communities were engaged in negotiations prior to the settlement of a CBA by the administration. Can you talk about what that engagement has looked like?
What I can say is that the Save Chinatown Coalition has reached out directly to different members of the administration and to the Sixers, and they have refused to meet with them on those terms. I think some of the meetings that have been referenced earlier from members of the administration last week have, not been what Chinatown residents, everyday Chinatown residents and business owners are referencing when they're saying that their requests for meetings have been denied.
Thank you. Also, I know that it's hard to oppose a project, but also talk about what can be in a CBA. I appreciate the difficulty in that, but I do want to know, what you think about the CBA. What do you think about what's included in the CBA as mitigation on displacement impacts for Chinatown? What do you think needs to be increased or added to the CBA? And what do you think might need to be removed? What are your opinions on that?
So I heard that, the $50 million is for the entire surrounding area. To build a restaurant my size, which is not big, we hire 20 people. To build a restaurant, we built it in 2015. The pandemic changed everything. To build a restaurant my size is going to cost anywhere from $600,000 to, I'll say, $1 million in this kind of, with the inflation and labor cost. And then there's 20 employees who lose their jobs. I don't know how the money will compensate that, because my business will be done. I'll have to shut down, and I'll have to think about my future, and my staff will have to think about their future, and they have families to feed. I just don't know how. There isn't enough money to make up for that kind of loss.
I would just add that I feel like the term community benefits agreement in this case is a misnomer. To be clear, there is not one set way to structure a CBA. In certain jurisdictions, sure, there are local laws that might govern standards for CBAs and require certain types of parties to be party to certain CBA agreements. That's not the case here in Philadelphia. And so let's just be clear that this CBA was structured on the mayor and the Sixers' terms and is just one way to present a potential mitigation plan. And as you've heard from so many, it clearly just does not fit the bill.
Do you have thoughts on what you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we gone.
Thank you, Council President.
I overlooked Mr. Eric Law. Mr. Law?
Thank you, Council President. First off, this chamber looks way smaller than in the streams. Just wanted to point that out. My name's Eric Law. My sister Debbie, just like my sister Debbie, I'm a third generation Chinatown, Philly Chinatown resident. And I just wanted to tell you guys my story. Grew up in the Philly public school system. Went to Central, 261. Went to Penn State, studied accounting, and currently I am manager of my family's business, retail gift shop in Chinatown. I've also been a community leader in Chinatown with the Philadelphia Suns. I think you've heard from Harry before. And I've been with the organization since I was 12 years old, picking up the basketball, and since then I've become a coach, I've become a mentor, I've become a board member, and I say that just to highlight the fact that organizations like the Philadelphia Suns have focused on youth development, and it's an importance to the community that I wanted to highlight. Of course, growing up hooping, I'm also a basketball fan. I'm a Sixers fan. I'm a Philly sports fan. As you can tell by my hat. Also, go Birds. Dallas sucks. And sometimes, and this is a personal aside. I wear hats. I wear sports hats all the time. And as a personal protest, I haven't worn my Sixers hat in the last 2 years. That's something little, but I just wanted to say that. And it's tough to support a team. Well, one thing that's losing, and that is trying to destroy my neighborhood. It's I want to say that for my family is a special case, since actually you guys have heard and read about the Chinatown, DC. We had businesses there in the 90s, and we actually had to leave right before the then MCI Center when it was proposed. Like, I remembered a lot. It was a big giant parking lot. We used to play football there. you know, and I went back years later, and my family's shop, it became a Fuddruckers. It became a Fuddruckers with like Chinese character on it, like just that's disrespectful, you know. And I say that because if you guys greenlight the 76th place, that could be our future, our Chinatown's future. And, you know, us being from Philly, you know, we pride ourselves, I don't know, you know, Joshua Harris is definitely not from Philly, but, you know, we pride ourselves in our character and our being authentic. And, you know, I feel like Chinatown and Philadelphia is an embodiment of that authenticity. And if you looked at the history of Chinatown, you know, in the beginning, it was just a conclave, like it was a Skid Row, you know, and we've kind of grown organically and built something that was very, very, like I said again, authentic, very unique, yes. And through the times, we've faced many times where we've been asked to take one for the team, whether it was the convention center, whether it was the rail line, whether it was a prison, etc. I mean, how many times does Chinatown have to be asked to take one for the team? Council members, you guys have the power to stop this. You guys have the power to save Philly's Chinatown. Please, thank you.
Before we break, the chair recognizes Councilmember Brooks, and then we will be breaking for recess. Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you. So my question is similar to Councilmember Gautier. So what has been your interactions with the Sixers organization and the administration in terms of dialogue about your concerns about this proposed arena?
I went to two town hall meetings in Chinatown where the sisters came to say they are going to build an arena whether we like it or not. And that was the end of the conversation for us, as residents, as business owners.
I'm going to add on to that. I also went to the public meeting that was announced, and there was two of them by the 76ers. Apparently, I found out after the fact there were closed-door meetings with stakeholders. I wasn't part of that stakeholder. I'm a small business owner. I wasn't involved in that. It was stakeholders that was on their side. I wasn't a part of any of that discussion until maybe 2 weeks ago. I was considered a stakeholder. I live in Chinatown. I have business in China. Why am I not a stakeholder? Maybe because I'm not vocal enough, right? But it's time to speak up and speak out. I never had any one-on-one meeting with them, which I don't need to, or any group meeting with the 76ers. I'm sure PCDC had, I'm right, PCD, I mean, people of organizations. I'm just me, and I haven't met with them. They haven't asked me, you know, they just told me that this is gonna happen regardless if you like it or not. If you don't like it, we're gonna move to New Jersey. That's all I'm aware of.
Just for clarity, you said the business owners and community members saw two posted meetings that you thought were open to
Those were two
attend?
public meetings that was announced to the community that was hosted by the 76ers. Other meetings I'm not aware of. Like, is that what you're asking? Like smaller committee meetings, I'm not aware of them. I wasn't ever asked. Maybe I needed to approach them, but I'm not really sure how that works because I don't know politics. I don't know how this works. And to piggyback on that, I speak English and I can read and write English. There's a lot of businesses, small businesses, that don't know how to read English or don't understand what's going on. We received a flyer 3 days right before the mayor's town hall meeting. And my shop didn't get one, only selected stores got it. And that flyer wasn't available in Chinese. And it was handed out Sunday night at 6 p.m. Shops close at 5 o'clock, guys. You can't hand out a flyer and say, come meet us, if it's not even in language they can understand, right? And 3 days before, on a Sunday night. Come on, guys, do better. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Brooks. We will now recess until 2:15. And just members, I just want to ask everybody to be back here promptly so we can get started, because we still have another 3 panels and also a significant list of individuals who want to participate in public comment. So please be back so we can start promptly at 2:15.